Hey kids, today I'm going to talk about South Sudan. It's the newest country in the world, becoming fully independent just in 2011. So I'm going to explain why the state came into being and what it's like there today. So to understand why South Sudan exists, you kind of have to know a bit about Sudan as a whole. So before 1956, Sudan was under the joint control of Egypt and Britain. At the end of 1955, they gave a declaration of independence and became their own thing. The independence movement, however, was led by this guy, Ismail al-Azhari, and he was like, hey everybody, we are an Arab-oriented Muslim nation. But then like 8 million Sudanese black people were like, whoa now, hold your camels, Ishmael. Us Africans, we ain't all about your Allah. He was like, yeah, well who cares? Oh, I see. So they got into a civil war between the primarily Arab-Muslim North and the traditionally oriented African South. That went on for 16 years until finally the North's like, alright fine, you can do your thing. Like you're still part of Sudan, but you can govern yourself for the most part. We'll take our falafels elsewhere. And that peace treaty lasted 11 years from 1972 to 1983. Eventually, the South was like, well things aren't that bad now, but the Arabs still technically control us, so it could get worse. And I'm not in the mood for any Sharia law anytime soon, so we should probably go back to fighting. So then there was another civil war, which was basically a continuation of the first one, and that ran on from 1983 all the way to 2005, when finally the two sides made a comprehensive peace agreement, which led to South Sudan becoming totally self-governing in 2006. Then after 5 more years of fiddling around with paperwork, South Sudan became a fully fledged independent nation in 2011. So notice how there were 2 civil wars before the South gained independence. I guess you could say 2 coups make a Sudan. So now that they finally got what they want, it must be great to live in South Sudan now, right? No, not really. It's actually just about the worst place you could ever choose to live in. Seriously, if somebody gave me the choice of moving to South Sudan or living the rest of my life with my dick inside an anthill, I'd be slathering on the honey before they even finish their sentence. Let me talk about a few reasons South Sudan sucks so bad. First, let me talk about ethnic groups. Europe, as we all know, contains a lot of ethnic groups. Scots, Serbs, Slovaks, Slovenes, Spaniards, Swedes. And those are just the big ones that start with S. There's like 100 others. The same is true with Africa. There are thousands of localized ethnic groups sprinkled all over the continent, whether or not you could tell from first glance. As such, South Sudan is home to a bunch of different peoples, each with their own languages and customs. And these groups have a long history of disagreeing with each other, like they don't get along much. So that's one thing. Second, remember how South Sudan was at war with the North for basically all of the past half a century? Well, as a result, the whole place is pretty geared for war and not much else. Their infrastructure is abysmal and they've got all these guns just lying around waiting to be shot at something. Third, South Sudan has a bunch of oil reserves in different locations around the nation, and we all know how much people like oil. Everybody wants control of whatever wells they can get. So between these 3 things, the whole place is basically one big whirlpool of chaos. At any given time, the South Sudan government is at war with at least 7 different armed groups from around the country, each of which is also at war with the other groups. And if that's not enough of a shitstorm, the government ended up basically splitting in 2 in 2013. This is what happened. So you've got the president, his name is Salva Kiir, and yes, he does actually wear a hat like this. It was a gift from George Bush, true story. And then the vice president, his name is Riek Machar. I'm probably saying those wrong, but it's fine. They don't have internet in South Sudan, so nobody can call me out here. So anyway, Salva Kiir, he's very aware of the fact that the country's in a very precarious spot at the moment. So he starts taking greater control of the government and the military, dismissing old people and installing those that he sees fit. And so Riek Machar, he's like, well gee whiz Salva Kiir, for someone who calls himself a president, that's pretty dictatory of you. Well, for someone who calls himself the vice president, that's pretty annoying assholey of you. Sir, all I'm saying is, I'm getting pretty sick of you and that gay hat of yours. I'm not wearing a hat. As president of South Sudan, I order you to put on a hat. Yeah, see? That hat's gay. You're wearing the exact same hat. Alright, fuck you, you're out of a job. Wait, what? Yep, you and your whole cabinet, get out. Okay, I made up the part about the hat, but the rest of that is true. Also, I should mention that Kiir and Machar come from 2 different ethnic groups. See, Kiir is a Dinka, whereas Machar is a Nuer, which only heightened the tensions between the two. So after Machar got the boot, he ended up taking a chunk of the military with him, most of which were Nuers like him. And they started a rebellion against Kiir's government. This is known as the South Sudan Civil War, and it's still going on to this day. So yeah, to sum it up, if you looked up clusterfuck in the dictionary, Well, you wouldn't find anything because clusterfuck isn't a real word. But if it was, there would probably be a picture of South Sudan next to it. Seriously, this place makes Hotel Rwanda look like Hotel California. And throughout it all, there's still a bunch of hardworking individuals just trying to make a living, farming or herding or whatever. But the constant warfare makes it so the average person has to live in virtually Stone Age conditions. Which sucks, but, you know, what can you do? So that's the story of the world's newest nation, kids. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, let me talk to you about dog breeding. Nowadays, dogs are mostly around just to be a cute companion, right? So breeding has gone from functionality to cuteness. And that's fine, as long as it stays within the bounds of nature. But that's not enough for today's breeder. So, how do you make a dog cuter? Apparently, by giving it disgusting genetic deformities. And chances are, you, the listener, agree with that. You just don't know you do. Let me show you what I mean. See this? This is a relatively normal dog. Notice the snout, the eyes, the shape of the head. Not too far gone from the wolves that today's dogs come from. Now let me take you through some other breeds. First is the Bull Terrier. 100 years ago, still looked pretty normal, right? Now here's today's version. Jesus! Who needs snouts, right? Let's just give it a long, continuous, boomerang-shaped head with 2 tiny holes at the end. Seriously, it looks like Toucan Sam is trying to fit inside a dog costume. And look at its eyes! They're permanently pointed up at the sky as if to say, God, why did you let me become this? Please kill me. Do you guys remember Spuds MacKenzie, the old Bud Light mascot? Well, I just realized why they chose a Bull Terrier of all dogs. It's because he looked like his mom drank nothing but Bud Light for her entire pregnancy. Next up is the Pug. I'll probably get some hate for this one, but I don't care. They've been bred specifically to look like they've been smashed in the goddamn face with a frying pan. And because of this, because of their fact that their skull is shaped like a fucking tuna can, they can barely breathe their whole lives. Ever been around a pug? Constantly, no matter the temperature or the weather, they sit there going, gah, 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 gah. And people think this shit is cute. If my baby came out with a flat nose, hair lip, cylindrical head, and no neck going, gah, 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 I'd be like, Jesus fuck, put it back in. It's clearly not done yet. Next is the Dachshund. Now there is no excuse for this one. The head's fine, right? But the body, good God. It's got a torso shaped like a goddamn doorstop with those pointless legs just kind of stapled on. Now it's been a little while since I reminded you what a normal dog looks like, so here. Now let me go into Photoshop real quick and do all the changes necessary to make this dog look like a dachshund. Look at that. That's not okay. Why even have legs at this point? Might as well just keep going until it's just a drumstick from the neck down. And there's no reason. It's just one day someone was like, well, people like dogs, and people like ferrets, so why don't we make some chimera abomination halfway in between the two, and see what happens. My least favorite breed, though, out of all of them, it's just straight up fucked in every way. A testament to humankind's never-ending corruption of the natural world. I'm talking about the Chihuahua. It's like somebody took a normal dog and boiled away every aspect except for anger and neuroticism, leaving this tiny hell creature behind. And this is one of the nicer pictures I could find. Take a look at this. Someone call a priest. And we let these things inhabit our homes. This poor woman's gonna wake up with her fucking nose chewed off and just be like, oh, Mr. Wiggles was a little hungry this morning, wasn't he? Meanwhile, the dog's just sitting there like, bloodlust. The only time they're not being needlessly aggressive towards people, it's when they're off pissing, shitting, and vomiting all over their surroundings. And you would think such a small dog would at least produce manageable waste, but much like the creature itself, the small things it does expel are straight up toxic. It's like some of the Chihuahua's pent-up hatred for the mortal plane manifests itself in every dump it takes. I would rather clean up a full-grown man's shit from my floor than wipe up the septic nightmare that is Chihuahua squirts. The only good thing about owning a Chihuahua is that if it ever gets rabies, it'll be fine, because you won't be able to tell the goddamn difference. It'll still be sitting there, business as usual. So that's my little rant about the monstrosities that live right beneath our noses. I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, when living things evolve, it's almost always for the better. After all, the reason genes get passed down is because of the fact that they help the organism survive. Occasionally though, adaptations that might help an animal in general can become huge drawbacks in other ways. Today, we're going to talk about some inherited traits that can end up screwing certain animals over if they're not careful. First is sloths. So, evolutionarily, life has found two distinct methods to handling survival on land. You got the plants and the fungi who just kind of hang out, and then you got the animals who actually, do things. The sloth is the one member of the animal kingdom who was brave enough to say, alright, I made the wrong choice here. This whole mobility thing, way overrated. So you know what? Fuck it. I'm changing teams. The sloth's sedentary lifestyle is made possible by the fact that the creature has the metabolism of the average college kid, sleeping 16 hours a day and only crapping like once a week. However, while this lifestyle is easily sustained on a diet of Hot Pockets and alcohol, it doesn't work as well when you eat nothing but leaves, which provide very little energy relative to volume. Because of this, you can have sloths who straight up kick the bucket just from being too full. Their sad, slow sloth stomachs spend so much energy over so much time trying to digest the matter, that by the time they're able to start absorbing energy, they've already fallen out of the tree dead from exhaustion. I learned about this next thing from my Uncle Harvey back when I was 8. He said to me, "Hey Sammy, did you know sharks die if they stop swimming?" At first I was skeptical, because this was the same man that told me that the squirrel on the road was just taking a nap. Several firm prods with a stick proved to me otherwise, so by this point in time, I figured Uncle Harvey just had a generally poor grasp on the concept of death. Apparently though, he was right about the first thing. Some species of sharks, such as great whites and whale sharks, need to constantly move forward in order to push new water into their mouths and through their gills so that they don't suffocate. It's kind of like when you were a kid and you had to keep running to keep the kite in the air, only instead of a kite, it's your respiratory system, and instead of the kite falling down, you would choke to death on your own deflated organs. Anyway, this method of breathing is known as ram ventilation. Following this logic, one would think that rams would then breathe through something called shark ventilation, but no, apparently they just breathe like everybody else. Next we have ferrets. So in some cultures, ferrets are referred to as polecats, and there are two main theories as to why that is. Some biologists believe that the name is based on the fact that ferrets are an evolutionary hybrid of the pole and the cat, as evidenced by their shape and features. However, others believe that the name is actually an outdated piece of Nazi propaganda, designed to show that Polish people are so dumb they don't know what a cat looks like. Nah, I'm just fucking with you guys. They're actually called polecats because of the old French word pole, meaning chicken, which comes from the fact that these guys would always break into farmers' hen houses back in the day. Back to the matter at hand though, there is one critical difference between ferrets and cats. When a cat eats some weird household item, it can always just vomit or crap it out, problem solved. However, things get a little more complicated when your intestines are the size of shoelaces and your body is shaped like a sideways question mark. In fact, ferrets are probably the easiest to clog animals in the world. They can get blocked up and potentially die just from a few of its own hairs or a cherry pit or something getting lodged in their intestines. And it takes more than just a pipe cleaner to fix that kind of issue. Most ferret parents have to take their pet to the hospital in the event of a blockage, in order to have the obstruction removed through surgery. So unless you want to pay thousands of dollars in vet bills, make sure to keep an eye on your ferret so it doesn't end up killing itself on something random.
How it feels to chew 5-gum.
Help! I can't shit no more!
5-gum. Stimulate your ferrets.
Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, whether you're a precocious young lad down by the swimming hole or a grizzled crime scene investigator, everybody's got some interest in dead bodies. Yes, from Weekend at Bernie's to Weekend at Bernie's 2 to Weekend at Bernie's 3 Revelations, stories about wayward corpses have certainly carved their niche in today's media. So, I thought I'd spin a few yarns about some real-life people who were kept out far past their expiration date. Our first tale follows one Elmer McCurdy. He was an outlaw during the twilight days of the Wild West. Thanks to his former life as a miner, McCurdy acted as the demolitions expert to his little posse, using nitroglycerin basically any time he had the faintest excuse to do so. Except, he was kind of a moron, so it didn't usually go quite as planned. Gotta say, after peanut butter and chocolate, my favorite combination of two things is probably gross incompetence and high explosives. Example, in March of 1911, McCurdy's band of rabble-rousers found out that $4,000 were in a safe in an approaching train. They managed to stop the entire locomotive, I don't even know how you do that, break in, hold everyone on board hostage, and locate the safe. McCurdy steps up to plate, right? Gotta blast the thing open, except I guess the excitement kinda got to him, because he ended up using like way too much nitroglycerin, like inordinate amounts. Ended up completely destroying the safe and its contents, and what few silver coins they made out with were literally melted to the frame of the safe and had to be peeled off. Anyway, he died in a shootout with police later that year, and the undertaker at the funeral home he was sent to couldn't find any next of kin on account of McCurdy being a rambling low-life varmint. varmint, so he just embalmed the hell out of him and said, "Hey boys and girls, want to see a dead criminal? Only one shiny nickel." And since LiveLeak wasn't around at the time, there weren't many places a kid could go to stare at a corpse for a while if he or she so desired, so it actually became a pretty popular attraction. Visitors would pay their dues by physically slipping the coin into the man's mouth, and the creepy-ass undertaker would come fish him out later, probably with bare hands all slowly and sensual-like. A few years passed when a couple of guys showed up claiming to be McCurdy's brothers, with a note from the local sheriff to back it up. They told the undertaker they had permission to go bury McCurdy, so he reluctantly relinquished the body to the men. Except, these guys weren't his brothers. They were just a couple of crusty freaking carnies. They shipped the body off to Kansas to become an attraction in the traveling show. From here, McCurdy traded hands a few more times. At one point, he was exploited for this one guy's film about narcotics. He was like, yeah, this pill-popping degenerate got shot while trying to rob a pharmacy for more dope the other day. The body was super old by then, so people are like, wait, why is he all desiccated and flaky and gross? He just goes, yep, that's what happens when you do drugs, kids. Your fucking skin falls off. Stay above the influence. At some point in his journey, he ended up getting coated in wax and paint to look a little less rotty, before ending up in a warehouse in 1949. Here's the thing, he was in there alongside some actual wax figures, and after spending 19 years in storage, nobody knew he was a real corpse anymore, so he ended up getting sold in 1968 as a mannequin to one Spoonie Singh, owner of the Hollywood Wax Museum. He tried to lend the guy out a couple times during his stay, but people found him too gross or unrealistic looking for whatever purposes they had in mind. So he ended up getting sold again and used as a prop of a hanged man at the Pike Amusement Zone in their Funhouse ride, with zero knowledge that he was an actual dead criminal. It wasn't until 1976, 65 years after his death, that an episode of The $6 Million Man was being filmed at the complex, and a stagehand tried to move the prop around only to have its arm break off in his hand. He was like, ugh, lousy stiff. Wait a minute, that's curious. This mannequin's got human flesh and bones inside of it. Wait a minute. Uh-oh. 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 The autopsy confirmed what everyone present at the time suspected. By this point, the body was so dried out and stale that it only weighed 50 pounds, which makes me think we should start a radical new fad diet where we just get people to mummify parts of their body. Like, Jenny, guess what? I just lost 30 pounds in 5 days. Wow, holy heck, how'd you do that? They call it the Egyptian cleanse. Anyway, with that, McCurdy was finally laid to rest back in his homeland of Oklahoma, and that film crew's lives were never the same again. Flashback to late 18th century.
Baloney.
There lived a physician by the name of Luigi Galvani. This guy was a big deal. He's the dude who discovered that, hey, animals got electricity in them. And his legacy still survives today in words like galvanize. One of his most famous experiments was the one where he used static electricity to make frog legs twitch on command. Around these parts, we call that the French salute. Stereotypes funny. Well, in 1803, his nephew, Giovanni Aldini, said, hey, that's pretty nifty and all, but what if we tried it on people? So the city of London was like, hey, now you're thinking with portals. One freshly executed criminal coming up. Aldini gathered a crowd and applied 2 diodes to the corpse's head, causing his face to scrunch up and one eye to flick open. Aldini was a showman though, he wanted some real action, so he then put the current through opposite points in the body, which made the whole thing flail around like Pinocchio in heat. Now today we know he was just exciting the dead muscles, right? But the people who were watching had no idea what was going on, so they were like, Jesus Christ, this guy's a fucking necromancer. Quick, go get grandma, maybe we can get in the will after all. Fun fact, this experiment actually ended up serving as inspiration for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which makes me wonder what other famous novels were based on real life events. Was a white whale ever pursued by a vengeful sea captain? Was there actually a mentally handicapped migrant worker who liked hugging rabbits to death? Was there ever a human soul as profoundly asinine and willfully ignorant as Amelia Bedelia? God, I hate her glassy-eyed face so fucking much. I just want to mash it into a running waffle maker, be like, huh, isn't that ironic? Grab her by her vacant fucking head, throw her out of a 747 and say, hey, why didn't you shoot yourself when you had the chance? Get it! By the way, this video ended up being way too long, so stay tuned for part 2 in a week or two. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, hope you had yourself a merry little whatever. I know I did. What do you like best about the holiday experience? My personal favorite part is where we systemically brainwash children into thinking they're supernatural beings who judge their every move and then invade their house at night. Now, everyone knows Santa, good old Saint Nick. ol' Father Christmas, ol' Christopher Kringle, ol' Elpheus Prime, Slayer of Elk and Bringer of Xboxes. And you've probably heard of some other characters somewhere too. Guys like Krampus, Belsnickel, Charlie Brown, Xi Jinping. Well, today I want to show you guys some more obscure Yuletide beings from different cultures all across the globe, but mostly Europe. Now, this first creature's name comes from the Welsh. As a matter of moral principle, I personally don't formally recognize the Welsh language. Maybe someday they'll figure out how W's and Y's work, then it'll be a different story, but for the time being, you'll have to excuse me for not condoning bullshit like this. So the thing allegedly called Mari isn't a true mythical creature per se, but more so a tradition carried out for at least the past few centuries in South Wales. No, I mean Old South Wales. This is how it works. Every holiday season, the village rapscallion will take a horse's skull and affix it to the end of a pole. Kinda like one of these things, except, you know, awful. The skull is typically decorated in some way, and sometimes they put in a lever so you can make the mouth move on its own. Then a white sheet is draped over the pole and its holder, thus giving the illusion that Famine himself has come to destroy all your figgy pudding. From here, one would think that the nightly festivities would include welshing your trousers and repenting for a lifetime of naughtiness, but no, it gets better. You know that whole mouth moving thing? Turns out that's not just for taking wild snaps at the faces of innocent children. The Mari Lwyd and its party of caretakers will go around to random houses and sing a song about wanting to be let inside. The inhabitants are then expected to sing back with excuses as to why they don't want this abomination in their home. All in rhyme, of course. This goes back and forth until either the Mari Lwyd gives up, or the party's invited in, at which point they get to raid your pantry and drink all your beer. So if you ever find yourself rap battling a horse skull in South Wales, don't panic. It's normal, I guess. Next we have Frau Perchta, a witch-like being said to visit during the holidays in the Alpine regions of Germany and Austria. Depictions of Perchta can range anywhere between beautiful woman and whatever the hell this is, but usually they fall somewhere in between. She's also sometimes shown with this big weird floppy goose foot. That's because she's apparently real into spinning. Not the 2-foot kind though, the 1-foot kind. It's said that this delightful spinster pays a visit to all the little wiener schnitzels on the 12th night of Christmas. If you were well behaved and hard working this year, she might leave you a small silver coin in your shoe. How kind. But if you've been an inattentive young lady and didn't spin all your flax that year, Perchta will trample all your half-woven fibers as punishment, and you'll say, weird flax, but okay. Fucking cut that out, Jesus. Then there's the stuff Perchta considers especially naughty, which can vary depending on who you ask. If you left your house a mess, or you didn't leave out the traditional bowl of porridge, or maybe you didn't eat your ceremonial fish and gruel on feast day, that's when you've been a real goober. As recompense, she'll rip out your fucking intestines through your abdominal wall and then stuff your empty body cavity with pebbles and straw until you're just as plump as when she started. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. Nobody knows what she does with your freshly harvested innards after she leaves. But being that she lives in the mountains and has an obsession with thread making, I think we can all infer the obvious truth. Of course, no discussion of folklore of any kind can truly be complete without taking a look at Iceland. Between the centuries of isolation and the volcanic fumes constantly spilling out over the countryside, it's no wonder that they're one of the world's biggest exporters of whack-ass mythology. Seriously, according to one 1998 survey, over 54% of Icelandic citizens said they believed in elves. Let me repeat that just so we're all clear. In 1998, the majority of the population of Iceland said they believed in elves, and a very large portion probably still does today. As such, the cast of characters said to visit during the holiday season over there is naturally quite diverse. The main lineup consists of the family pictured here. This is the leader of the bunch, a troll, goblin, ogreish type lady named Grilla. Grilla just fucking eats kids. That's it. She's said to prefer the naughty ones, but as long as it's small and made out of kid, she's game. Then you got her husband, Le Palu, who lives with her in her cave, generally considered to be equally ogreish. When the holidays roll around, if there's no soot in your fireplace, he'll reward you with a pickled herring. But if it's dirty, he'll scoop up the ash and dump it in your bed, ooh. Nah, just messing with you. None of that's true. He also just eats children. The couple also has a giant cat called, this. The cat's main concern is whether or not a person received new clothes for Christmas. Pretty hypocritical considering it walks around naked all the time, but whatever. Anyway, if you got new clothes, then good for you, you got new clothes. On the other hand, if you didn't get any, well, can you guess what he does? You want to take a wild stab? Yeah, that's exactly right. He fucking eats you. Children, adults, doesn't matter. He'll even vor your dog. He doesn't care. Finally, you got the best of the bunch, the 13 Yule lads, each of which visits on a different day leading up to Christmas. They're kind of like the 7 dwarves, but whereas those guys are jolly and helpful and stupid shit like that, the only real goal of the Yule lads is to harass and inconvenience people as much as possible, and each one has a unique way that they go about doing that. I'm going to go through all 13. Now please remember, I am making none of this up. I'm not even going to try to say the Icelandic names, so I'll just give you guys the English translations, which are very apt, by the way. First, you got Sheepcoat Clod, who goes around harassing sheep, but he's easy to catch on account of his peg legs. Then there's Gully Gulk, who hides in gullies to steal milk from your cows. There's Stubby, he's real short. He eats the leftover crust out of pie pans. This one's called Spoon Licker. He licks spoons. He's also incredibly thin on account of malnutrition for some reason. There's Pot Scraper, he scrapes pots. And Bowl Licker, who's like Spoon Licker. The key difference here being that he licks bowls. You got Door Slammer, who slams doors in the middle of the night. And then Skyr Gobbler, who gobbles up all your skyr, which is like a Nordic yogurt type thing. Whoa, who's that up in the rafters? It's Sausage Swiper, of course. Here to swipe your sausages. And who's that in the windows? You bet your ass it's Window Peeper. Look at him peep. And who could forget our favorite, Doorway Sniffer, who sniffs your doorway with his giant freakish nose to seek out bread. There's Meat Hook, he steals your meat with a hook. And finally, Candle Stealer, who fucking, you get the picture. So, if you know some kids who just won't behave, maybe it's time to take a page out of Iceland's book come next holiday season. Now remember, your friend dressed up as Grilla doesn't have to actually eat the kids. Just bite him a couple times, that'll be enough. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Nah, but seriously, fuck Swift the cockatiel. Look at this ugly tree-sniffing idiot. I hope he gets AIDS. I mean it.
Kids, let's talk about Fidel Castro. We're all familiar with Castro, right? Dictator of Cuba for the whole second half of the 20th century, main antagonist of the Cuban Missile Crisis, you know. Anyway, this man loves 3 things. He loves Cuba, he loves communism, and good God, does the man love dairy. Yep, you heard me right. The all-powerful dictator of communist Cuba is obsessed with anything related to milk and its derivatives. I drew up a little chart here, right? I call it the Leche Lovin' Ladder. At the bottom you got dairy farmers, then you got Ross O'Donovan, then Mr. Bones, then starving babies, and then all the way up at the top here, you got Fidel Castro. Today, I'm going to share a few true stories that illustrate his preoccupation. Okay, the first one isn't really a story so much as a fact, but according to several sources, Castro was known to be able to eat 18 scoops of ice cream after a meal. That's more than 2 pints. If that doesn't impress you, then go try it for yourself. Me, I can barely manage a pint and a half on an empty stomach, and Castro's doing it on top of a full meal. But it gets better. Being such an ice cream connoisseur, Castro ordered the construction of an ice cream shop. But this isn't your average everyday parlor, not by a long shot. He built a straight up ice cream complex taking up an entire city block. This was a piece of modern architecture too, in total contrast to the surrounding slums, all for the sake of ice cream. The place is called Coppelia, and it's still open today. Of course, Castro's obsession went beyond just personal pleasure. Dairy was so dear to him that it often found its way into diplomatic interactions. Like one time, a French diplomat came to visit, so Castro whips out some Cuban cheese. Specifically though, it was Camembert cheese, a variety that France is famous for. French guy was like, hey, not bad, it's almost as good as the French kind. Try it again, I think you'll find it's even better than the French. Alright, I wouldn't say that. I'm sorry, are you disrespecting my cheese? In my house? On my island? No, I mean it's good, I just said the French kind is better. Maybe if you froggy fucks bathed once in a while, you'd be able to taste the cheese instead of your own B.O. Listen, you've got your cigars, we've got our cheese, live with it. Fine. Fuck him, it's good cheese. I'm paraphrasing just a little bit, but that's basically how it went down. So already it's obvious that dairy is of great value to Castro. Most exceptional, however, is how this value reflected in his leadership. Naturally, having an entire nation at his disposal, Castro wanted to bolster the Cuban dairy industry as much as possible. But there was one problem. Cuba initially had 2 types of cows called La Reinas and Zebus. La Reinas came from the days when Spain ruled Cuba, and Zebus originated from India. Both of these cows are well well suited to the Cuban environment, having a very high tolerance for heat. However, they don't produce much milk, they're mostly just raised for their meat. So Castro decides to import thousands of Holsteins from Canada. Holsteins are the classic black and white cows, and as we all know, you can juice these guys for days. They are utterly superior. Only problem is, they're used to living in Canada, so when they're plopped down under the scorching Caribbean sun, it's going to stress them out. They're not going to be laughing cows by any means. So as a result, Castro's imports still didn't put out enough milk to satisfy his desires. At this point, your average run-of-the-mill dairy queen would have given up. But Castro, he's more than that. He's a dairy dictator. So he ordered the construction of a giant air-conditioned complex with the sole purpose of providing a comfortable environment for his Holsteins. And it helped a little bit, but they were still stressed out. They still weren't putting out at their natural levels. And as you can imagine, climate controlling an entire facility is very expensive, so Castro was forced to abandon the project. But like the astronaut he is, Castro held on to his dream of finding the Milky Way. So he gathered a team of scientists and farmers and ordered them to breed together the Zebus and the Holsteins in order to produce a heat-resistant, lactose-pumping super cow. The breeding efforts were mostly a bust, never producing the bovine master race that Castro longed for. However, there was one exception. Under Castro's program, a single individual was born that met his expectations with flying colors. The cow was named Ubre Blanca, Spanish for white udder, and she produced world record-breaking volumes of milk, peaking at 110 liters a day. That's more than 29 entire gallons of lactation. Needless to say, Castro was absolutely euphoric at this isolated success of his. To say he went ballistic would be an understatement. He went intercontinentally ballistic. Like, India hasn't got shit on the levels of cow worship that Castro performed. Daily updates were published in the Cuban national newspaper describing Ubre Blanca's health and productivity, and when she died in 1985, Castro commissioned a giant marble statue of the cow in her honor. He also had scientists harvest tissue and egg samples for the sake of preserving her DNA. After Ubre Blanca's death, Castro's plans for the Cuban dairy industry got even more desperate and ridiculous somehow. This is based off of an actual conversation that he had with his team of scientists in 1987. Okay guys, hear me out. What if we make cows that are the size of dogs, so that way they can live in people's apartments with them? Fidel, I don't think that's gonna work. No, it'll work. You just have to grow grass in the apartment too. You can't be serious. Yeah, you just gotta put up some fluorescent lights. Bam, little grazing patch for your doggy cow. You are a fucking lunatic. And obviously nothing ever came of that idea, and Cuba's dairy industry is still floundering today, sadly. So yeah, if you haven't gotten the picture by now, the dude likes milk. Imagine he's at the birth of his grandson, right? Ah, what a beautiful baby boy. Fidel, there's something we need to tell you. Your grandson, he's lactose intolerant. Prepare the firing squad. Anyway, there's plenty of other miscellaneous stories surrounding his little preoccupation, like the time the CIA tried to poison his milkshake, so I just decided to highlight a few big ones. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, can I tell you a secret? Come here. Closer. Nuclear energy? It's not a bad thing.
Sure, 30 years ago, things like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island were certainly something to worry about. Today, however, it's a different story. Let me tell you kids about thorium. Thorium is uranium's neighbor, just 2 houses down. He's a lot like uranium, just he's a lot more chill. Uranium's the type to do a half-assed job during the day and spend every night doing Jaeger bombs and blasting Kendrick Lamar, you know the type. Thorium, on the other hand, is more career-oriented, and at the end of the day, he's cool with just watching Netflix, eating Ben & Jerry's. Let me walk you through all the steps of nuclear power, and you'll see why thorium is so great. Let's start with mining. So when somebody doesn't feel like getting out of bed, they'll, whine and moan and roll over. Likewise, when uranium doesn't want to get out of bed, he releases deadly cancer-inducing radon gas. This means workers have to put up expensive ventilation systems just to, not die. Thorium's chill. You go to wake him up, he understands he's got a job to do. Goes without a fuss. And even when you do get uranium up, like the lazy bastard he is, he has much less concentration in his ore compared to thorium, so more work has to be done just to get the same amount of material. The Earth's crust also has much more thorium in total than uranium, about 3 times as much. So you got your ore, and you've extracted it. Ready for work, right? Wrong. You see, natural uranium mainly consists of 2 different isotopes, uranium-235 and uranium-238. 238 kinda sucks at life,
So uranium has to undergo enrichment to up its concentration of 235. Uranium's kind of like that kid with ADHD, right? You got him in the building, but you still got to give him his own little room and a couple Ritalin before he starts doing anything productive. That's expensive. Thorium, on the other hand, look at him. He's got his sneakers laced, glasses on. He's ready to go. No enrichment needed. Finally, you're ready to make some power. This part's important, kids. Pay attention. So this is where the biggest difference between uranium and thorium comes in. You see, uranium is fissile, whereas thorium is fertile. This means uranium can do his job all by himself, just doing his thing all on his own, whereas thorium's kind of a cripple. He needs a little bit of someone else just to give him the push he needs to start releasing energy. This might sound like a bad thing, but if you think about it, it's a lot safer. If you've got your power production process started, and shit suddenly hits the fan, uranium's just going to keep going. You can try to move him around, cool him down or whatever, but at the end of the day, this man's going to be swinging, and it's not going to be a good day for anyone. Thorium, he's only got one leg. Piss him off, he takes a swing at you, just push him over, you're good. Please note, Salmonella Academy does not condone pushing cripples. And that's what thorium reactors do. They allow the barely radioactive liquid thorium to drain away from its helper in the event of an accident, so there's no way for things to escalate. Much safer. But while the process for thorium is better, most of the time people care more about the results. Well, it just so happens thorium is pimpin' in that regard as well. CERN estimates that 1 ton of thorium is capable of producing as much energy as 200 tons of uranium. That's a lot. To compare, that's also equivalent to 3.5 million tons of coal. But let's talk about byproducts. Thorium, being as pure as it is compared even to enriched uranium, produces about 100 times less nuclear waste. So whereas we might not have as many X-Men, that also means much less work has to be done to dispose of the material. Additionally, it's very difficult to make a nuclear weapon out of thorium, since it can't do much on its own. The only thing that's really weaponizable about thorium plants is that little bit of helper material I talked about earlier. But overall, that's a pretty minuscule amount. That means we can feel a lot better about plopping these plants down in places like Iran. So kids, you heard it here first. Thorium is the future. Powerful, clean, reliable, and if things go wrong at the end of the day, you can still kick its ass.
Hey kids, if I learned anything from my middle school career, it's that what may seem like a good idea initially will often be remembered only as a foolish mistake. Here's a few pieces of technology from yesteryear that have since fallen into total obscurity. So I've always believed that there's no point in having many small things when you can have one big thing. Why have many shrimp when you can have one lobster? Why drink many glasses of milk when you can eat one udder? Why have many cheese-its when you can have one cheese-them? Patent pending. And why have many street lights when you can have one moonlight tower? These guys were real popular back in the 1880s and 90s, often standing at over 150 feet tall and illuminating several blocks from a single point. Not very well, mind you. Matter of fact, they were so dim, we didn't even have the conscience to just call them light towers. Had to go and stick the moon on the front so people didn't get their hopes up. But thanks to our good old friend the inverse square law, you still needed a fuck ton of light to pull this off. So they used incredibly harsh and UV emitting arc lights instead of incandescent bulbs. All the light of the moon and all the vision damage of the sun, talk about a win-win. Sadly, these beasts have fallen by the wayside over the past century or so, except for in Austin, apparently, but they use friendlier mercury vapor lamps in them, so they only get half points. Now, anyone who's been around a baby long enough knows they always have a cloud of ghoulish stench hovering around them. Jeez Louise, somebody better air out that musty little muskrat before grandma starts drooping again. You could stick him on the clothesline for a while, but knowing that little moron, I'm sure he'd find a way to hurt himself somehow. Introducing the baby cage. Finally, city dwellers all across the nation have a way of unleashing their postnatal funk on the unsuspecting passerby below. These were in vogue for a while before falling out of style a bit of the way into the 20th century, because apparently society started deeming babies more valuable than air conditioners. I don't really get it personally, but this is also around the time we started putting lead in gasoline, so it's probably for the best we kept them inside all day. Matter of fact, it's my firm belief that without kids growing up breathing lead, there's no way pet rocks would have taken off in the 70s. Wow, alienating baby boomers. He's so brave and controversial. Now, in the days between the Great War and the not as great but still pretty alright war, people were trying to find efficient means of detecting an incoming air attack. They climbed their nation's tallest mountains to seek the wisdom of their greatest elders, and the wise men said, big ears. So that's what they did. These giant discs were known as acoustic mirrors and were designed to focus incoming sound over a 5-meter diameter into a single point. They were reasonably effective as listening devices. A few of them in Britain were able to pick up the sound of a plane from all the way across the English Channel. Of course, radar came along soon after, rendering these things completely useless beyond looking brutalist as hell. For real, instant album cover material right here. Ah! One of the Pep Boys is pulling a Spanish Inquisition on this poor wayward harlot. Huh. Just kidding. Despite the fact that this looks so very, very much like a state-of-the-art instrument of torture, it's actually just a beauty micrometer. Think those shoe size measure things at Foot Locker, only instead of one primitive measurement, it records the entire topology of your face and skull at once. With this data, a trained cosmetologist would be able to pinpoint exactly what features of your head should be enhanced and reduced with makeup in order to achieve a maximum calculated attractiveness after you've paid for their services. Clearly this device must have been effective. After all, beauty is entirely objective. What, eye of the beholder? Check the name tag, buddy. Apparently though, women didn't like being strapped into a birdcage and having their every minute flaw meticulously laid out in front of them, so this thing never really took off in the end. Next we have the Humlauf. This was a device made during World War II designed to let infantry shoot around corners. It's like the Germans sat down and watched that part in Tom and Jerry where the conniving rat bends the gun barrel back at his adversary. They said, "Mein Gott." They came in a variety of angles between 30 and 90 degrees, and even came with a little periscope so you could see what you were shooting at. But as we all come to find out when we reach adolescence, cartoons are the arbiters of deceit, because these things would invariably break within the first couple hundred shots or so. And even when they did work, the rounds would fucking explode from the massive acceleration, turning a deadly bullet into an ineffectual spray of shrapnel. These were so ineffective that only the 30-degree model ever saw significant production beyond prototypes, and even that was very limited. Say, you ever look at regular mouse traps and go, not enough property damage? Well, check this out. Patented in 1882, it's the revolver mousetrap, brought to you by the makers of the snail trebuchet and the cockroach claymore. Thanks to the marvels of the modern era, all those tiresome hours of intense varmint slang can be outsourced to one little gadget on the floor of your kid's playroom. Now when you hear a gunshot in the middle of the night, you can rest easy knowing that, one way or the other, there's one less pest for you to deal with in the morning. Boom. 1850. Steam locomotives are all the rage. You're in the transport business, but all you can afford is a couple dumb horses. Sure, they move things from point A to point B almost as well at a fraction of the cost, but your cool rail riding friends called you a whack ass and it really hurt your feelers. Well, have we got the invention for you? The Impulsoria uses an ingenious system of treadmills to turn that horse to be beckoned into a force to be reckoned with. Sure, it's expensive as hell to make and limits your services entirely to railroads, but just look at it. Instant pussymobile. Slap some rims and a spoiler on that, you're laughing. This machine is recorded at having a maximum output of 2 to 4 horsepower, which sounds about right, and it didn't see much use outside a couple exhibitions. Now, if there's one hobby that people in the past enjoyed, it's smoking. Whoo boy did they like smoking. And with every great wholesome activity comes a million novelty items to go along with it. Everyone's seen the long cigarette, but how about the really long cigarette? Want to smoke in the rain? Here you go. Going snorkeling? Hey, you know what's more important than oxygen? Nicotine. But hey, wanna know the only thing better than a cigarette? 2 cigarettes. You know what? Fuck it. Have the whole pack. You earned it. Of course, if you're trying to cut back, you can always share it with a friend. Aw, how heartburning. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and check out this JPEG.
Hey kids, it's Tips Tuesday. So today I'm giving you a beginner's guide on how to unicycle. Alright, let's do this. Tips Tuesday. Step number 1, buying a unicycle. This part's pretty easy. I got mine on Amazon. You are gonna wanna pick the proper size, however, based on your height. I'm lanky as a fucking Kong, so I got a 24-inch. If you on the shorter side, go for the 20-inch. If you under 13, well, you probably shouldn't be on my channel. But if you are, go for the 16-inch. They're generally only around $60 or $70, mostly because they're basically just a wheel and a seat, so that's a plus. Step number 2, assembly. Okay, you can probably do this part on your own. They give you directions in the box, so I'm not going to waste your time with this. However, you do want to make sure your pedals are on the correct way. If you put them on backwards, it could make it so they unscrew while you're riding. Trust me, I learned the hard way. Step number 3, mounting. Kids, a unicycle is like a woman. It's not hard to get to know a good unicycle, especially if you've got lots of money. But if you want to mount it, that's still going to require some skill on your part. In my experience, however, I've found that those things that are hardest to mount are oftentimes the most rewarding. You see this tricycle? This tricycle's a whore. It has a poor relationship with its father, and it does not deserve your respect. Unicycles, that's where the real men play. Here's how you do it. First off, find something to hold on to. Trust me, you're gonna need it. Could be a car, or a trash bin, or Jay Leno's chin. Me, I use my basement's low ceiling. If you can reach yours, I highly recommend it. Next, rotate the wheel so that one pedal is at the bottommost point. That's where your first foot's gonna go. Once you got all your weight on that foot, put the other one into place. As you do so, you will find yourself being placed upon the seat. Now guys, remember how I said a unicycle is like a woman? Well, forget that for a moment, because you want your junk to have as little involvement with the unicycle as possible. Remember in middle school you learned about levers? Well, you're gonna want to use your taint as a fulcrum on the seat in order to maintain your balance. Too far back, you're gonna fall over. Too far forward, you're just gonna castrate yourself. So be careful. Step number 4, riding. Okay, remember my woman metaphor? That's back on. When you're riding a unicycle, you require great balance, as well as a steady rhythm. Also, you're probably not gonna last too long your first few times, just FYI. If you prefer, you can deflate your tires a little when you're first learning, cause a flabby unicycle might not let you go as fast, but they're certainly easier to ride. Anyway though, riding a uni is a lot like riding a bike. Except instead of just balancing on your left-right axis, you gotta worry about your front-back axis as well. So you on a bike, you wanna turn right, you lean right, right? Same with every direction on a unicycle. If you wanna go forward, in addition to pedaling, you gotta lean forward. For your first few goes, you're probably gonna wanna hold on to something. This ain't called a crash course for nothing. Fortunately with the uni, it's very easy to dismount whenever things go wrong. Out of hundreds of failures, I personally only ever landed face first around 2 or 3 times. Above all, keep practicing. Eventually, kids, you'll be like that stupid ass frog meme that everybody hates. And remember, riding a uni is like riding half a bike. You only half forget. Sure.
Hey kids, time for another hot steamy load of knowledge dripping down your neck and chest. Today, we're gonna talk about the greatest mind to ever live. Nope, not him. Nope. Keep trying. Who I'm really referring to is the ancient Greek philosopher known as Diogenes of Sinope. Diogenes followed the school of thought known as cynicism. Far from the yelling at CNN, sitting down during the pledge kind of cynicism we know today, cynic philosophy centers around the rejection of conventional desires in favor of a simple, moderate lifestyle. But while many philosophers made a virtue out of self-discipline, Diogenes took all that to a whole new level. He was the most down-to-earth guy out there. Literally, he lived on the ground, in a big tub in the marketplace where he'd beg for a living. For a while, his only possession was a wooden bowl, until one day he saw a child drinking out of his hands, and he was like, what do I need this shit for? Now, though his way of life and perspective was unique enough, it's the way Diogenes showed it that really set him apart from the rest. When someone today wants to go against society, they dye their hair blue and make a blog post about how there aren't any obese women of color in Super Smash Bros. On the other hand, when Diogenes has something to say, he just jerks off in public. Takes a dump in the amphitheater, pisses on passerby, whatever. The way he saw it, he was just performing much needed bodily functions while also protesting the superficiality of the civilization around him. Keep in mind, though he was an unwashed, publicly defecating homeless man, that's not all he was. His wit was easily on par with his philosophical contemporaries, and his lack of inhibition meant that everyone knew it. For example, here's an often pondered question of the day. How do you define a human in the simplest of terms possible? Plato decided to tackle this question, and he came up with featherless biped. And in the ancient Greek world, they didn't have any kangaroos or gibbons or nothing, so people were the only things around that both walked on 2 legs and didn't have feathers. Plato thought he was real clever with that one. Diogenes, on the other hand, he wasn't having any of it. So he said, alright, you pompous prick, I'll give you a featherless biped. So, in reality, we do not learn, and what we call learning is only a process of recollection. Oh god damn it, not you again. What's up, fuckers? Hey, check out this person I found. Isn't it such a human? Look at him, wow. What a guy. Anyway, love to stay and chat, but I saw some trash outside that looked delicious. Smell you later, deliberator. Yes, my student.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Here's another anecdote. Macedonian King Alexander was a big fan of Diogenes, so he decided to pay him a visit. And he said, hey man, big fan. If there's any favor I can do for you, anything at all, just let me know, I'll make it happen. Now to put this into perspective, this is Alexander we're talking about. The guy who had his cousin straight up assassinated so he could take the throne. The guy who would later go on to conquer the majority of the civilized world. And you know what Diogenes says? He goes, yeah, you can do me a favor. Move over, you're in my light. Wow, I'm not even mad. You really are just a legend. Diogenes lived up to the ripe old age of 89. I don't know if that's a testament to his lifestyle or if he just got lucky, but either way, if there is a god, he definitely has a sense of humor. The exact cause of Diogenes' death varies depending on which source you look at. Some say he died from an infected dog bite. Others say it was from eating raw octopus. My favorite theory is that one day he just got tired of living, and he just held his breath till he died. He left behind instructions on what to do with his body after he passed. Now, when people think of special post-mortem instructions like these, they usually think, scatter my ashes at 6:53 a.m. off the western face of Mount Rainier using my grandfather's favorite ladle. None of that with Diogenes. He kept it simple. In the words of Danny DeVito,
when I'm dead, just throw me in the trash.
Specifically, he wanted his body tossed into the wild so animals could feast on him, thereby giving back to the earth what little he took from it. So kids, moral of the story, don't judge a book by its cover. The man who appears to be nothing more than a shit-smeared babbling vagrant could actually be the wisest man you'll ever meet. Or he could really just be a raving fucking lunatic. Bring a knife, just in case. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, guess what? You could be a freak of nature and not even know it. Yep, not every deformity is visible to the untrained eye. Today, we're going to talk about a few physical defects that you, the listener, might have. First is situs inversus. So situs inversus is when a person is born with some or all of their organs mirrored along the vertical axis. This can range from a heart that's on the right instead of the left to the entire body cavity being flipped around. The condition is pretty rare, affecting about 1 in every 10,000 people. According to Wikipedia, plenty of people live their lives with this condition without knowing about it. Considering that even little kids know that their heart is supposed to be on the left, I find this a little hard to believe, but who knows. At any rate, the first doctor visit where you find all this out sure would be interesting. Whoa, I think your testicles are on backwards. What? Hold on, maybe I'm just holding them weird. Let me just... no, yeah, they're definitely on backwards. I don't follow. It's not that hard a concept. The left one's on the right and the right one's on the left, that's all. Okay. Does that mean anything? Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to be the guy with the backwards nutsack, but that's just me. What do you mean? Just, you know, kind of weird, isn't it? What is weird about it? How are they different? Can you see it? Can you feel it? Is it dangerous? Look, I'm a doctor, not a cosmetologist, alright? Next is bell clapper deformity. This is a condition that affects 1 out of every 125 males. So in a normal nutsack, the nuts are anchored to the sack in a certain way that limits their mobility. But if you have bell clapper deformity, this anchor isn't present, meaning your nads are free to swing around much more independently than normal. Being that we, as males, don't often compare our scrotal dynamics with other men, most people aren't aware of their deformity, at least not at first. However, having free-floating testes comes with a significantly higher chance of suffering from testicular torsion, which is where your sperm tube gets all twisted around as a result of rigorous exercise or other mechanical means. This condition is extremely painful and oftentimes requires a visit to the hospital in order to prevent that nut from literally dying from hypoxia. Wait a minute, these aren't on backwards, they're just all twisted up. What? Fix them? Yeah, I'm trying. Try harder. Hey, you ever try to untangle a pair of earbuds through a plastic bag? This is like that except sweatier. Cut me some slack, alright? Don't get your balls in a twist. More of a twist. Next is the accessory spleen. So most of us have at least heard of this spleen. For those of you that don't know a lot about it, basically it's a softball-sized organ right around here that helps out your bloodstream and immune system. But apparently, 1 out of every 10 people have not 1, but 2 spleens. Sadly, the second spleen isn't another full-sized organ, but rather a little enclosed ball of spleen tissue about the size of a peanut M&M. Since it is self-enclosed, it's technically considered another organ. But because of its small size, it's not all that beneficial to have one or anything, it's just kinda there. Hey, I haven't seen you around before, are you new on campus? Oh, yeah, I just got here a couple days ago. Well, hey man, welcome to UCLA, if you want I can... Wrangle Rock! What is that? It's a good show! Oh, that's Toby. He's my accessory. Do you listen to The Offspring? Is it talking to me? Do you listen to The Offspring? Well, I mean, I used to when I was younger, not so much nowadays. Well, you're gonna go far, kid. I'm gonna go now. Do you think he got the reference?
Yeah, Toby, I'm sure he did.
Finally, we have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. The only reason I'm including this one is because of something that happened in health class during my freshman year of high school. Our teacher was telling us all about how you should never drink during pregnancy. She also said that between 2 and 5% of people in the United States have some form of FASD. Then she goes, "Looking around the room, I do see a couple people that have the distinguishing facial features. Not gonna name names, of course." And then she just continued on with her lesson as if she didn't just drop a huge bombshell on all of us. So needless to say, this scared the shit out of me. Cause although I consider myself a little bit on the intellectual side, for all I know, I could have been lined up to be the next Einstein, and then my would-be genius brain just got Jaeger bombed into a merely above average one. So as soon as I got home, I pulled up a chart that showed all the distinguishing facial features for FASD, and compared it in the mirror. Thankfully, my philtrum was distinct and my upper lip was plump, so I'm in the clear as I know now. Statistically speaking though, there's a good chance that at least a few of the moms of the people watching this video are not the angels that they make themselves out to be. So, you know, food for thought. It really is a curse, though, learning about this chart here, because the features are subtle enough that those who are affected still look normal to the average person. But once you're on the lookout for them, next thing you know, you're on Facebook, your friend posted pictures of her kid, all the comments are like, "Oh my god, he's so cute, what a perfect little guy," and you're the only person there who knows otherwise. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, whenever I browse this site, I see more and more videos of people talking about things like YouTuber drama, the election, world politics, and it made me think, hey, maybe I should start covering more relevant, nuanced topics in my videos. Anyway, let's talk about chickens. So the story of the chicken begins a long time ago in Southeast Asia. Now, this area had a ton of bamboo growing all over the place. And the thing about bamboo is it follows a very specific life cycle, where once every 50 years or so, every bamboo plant in a given region will blossom at the exact same time. Then, shortly after, they litter the whole area with these little seeds known as bamboo rice, or as I call them, bambinos. These pellets get planted, the current bamboo dies out, and the cycle starts over. Now, enter the ancestor of the domesticated chicken, known as the red jungle fowl. The jungle fowl lived in the same area as the bamboo, and, as you can imagine, they got a lot of benefit out of being literally knee-deep in food once every half-century. So much so that evolution basically said, alright, when food supplies go up, I want you to just start pumping out babies like there's no tomorrow. That way, we can take as much advantage of each bloom as possible. As a result, the chicken population became synchronized with the bamboo, shooting up during blooms and dwindling in between. Then humans showed up and they saw this pattern, and they said, wow, how bamboozling. And then they realized, wait a minute, that pun was dumb. But also, we can harness this whole chicken cycle thing. All we have to do is give these guys a whole bunch of food, and we can make their reproductive systems go into overdrive whenever we want. Do you know what that means? Lots of hot bird porn. No, it means we get as many eggs as we could ever dream of. So, with a bit of work, we managed to domesticate the chicken around 5000 BC. And as you can imagine, the idea of having a literal egg-laying machine around the house was extremely popular, leading to the chicken spreading across the entirety of the civilized world over the course of a few millennia. I think it's interesting that, despite the fact that the West has had chickens for most of its history, it wasn't until way later that we figured out where they came from. Like, alright man, it's time to delve into the world of the unknown. We're gonna see things the likes of which man has never laid eyes upon before. But, if you keep your wits about you, we just might make it out of here alive. Hey, is this yours? No? Weird.
What the hell?
Of course, having a constantly supercharged uterus is not without its drawbacks. After all, the chicken essentially goes through its entire menstrual cycle every day. So next time your girlfriend's complaining about how bad her period is, get her a box of chocolates and be generally attentive to her needs. You prick. Anyway, one thing with chickens and most other egg-laying critters is that they only have one hole in their pelvic region, which is called a cloaca, I think. Or cloaca. Cloaca? So the Croatia basically acts like a funnel, taking all the eggs and waste and sending it down the same chute. And while this might sound convenient at first, there is one fatal disadvantage that affects chickens in particular. Sometimes the egg can get stuck on its way out, leading to a condition known as egg binding. And since this means nothing can exit the clamato anymore, the egg-bound chicken ends up dying of constipation over the course of a couple days. Hey Jerry, how you doing? Not good, Sean. Not good. Oh man, what's wrong? It's just, ever since Jenny got egg-bound, things have been so stressful. Her funeral expenses are through the roof, and her memory means so much to me, but If the bills keep coming in like this, I'm not sure my family will be able to handle it. Well, hey man, you know what they say, don't put all your eggs in one casket. Let's just hope she doesn't get egg-zoomed. I'm sorry. Don't ever contact me or my kids ever again. I understand. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, time for another riveting tale from the annals of history. Our story begins in New York in 1932 with a man named Michael Malloy. Not much was known about Malloy except for the following. He was around 60 years old, homeless, an alcoholic, Irish, and a former firefighter. So one day, a few guys were hanging out in the local speakeasy, including Tony Marino, the owner of the joint, and a couple of regulars by the names of Francis Pasqua and Daniel Kreisberg. And who else stumbles in but old Dusty McGee looking to get his morning fix? Marino's like, you know, I've had it up to here with that Michael Malloy character. He never pays his tabs, smells like the crevice behind an unwashed ear, harasses my clientele. Did you know the Hindenburg disaster didn't actually happen? Yeah, it was an inside job by the government to make Big Zeppelin look bad. Personally, I'm glad. One less industry controlled by the fucking Krauts.
The Hindenburg disaster doesn't happen for another 5 years, dumbass.
Ah, bite me. And every day, he ends up like that. So Pasqua's like, yikes, seems like quite the dilemma on your hands. Lucky for you, I've come up with the perfect solution. Let me hear it. I say we deploy a ploy to destroy that unemployed Malloy. Shut up. Anyway, go on. I'll take out a life insurance policy on him. Then we let him drink as much as he wants. Obviously he's gonna kick it. I mean, look at him. No self-control. See that? He just drew from the stockpile while there's still moves to be made on the tableau. Oh, I like that joke. Then, once he's dead, we get all the money for ourselves. Win-win. The first part of the plan went through without a hitch. Pasqua took out not one, but 3 policies on Malloy's life, with Joseph Murphy, a bartender at Marino's, posing as Malloy's brother and being named as the sole beneficiary. In total, the group stood to gain $3,576, which is like 66 grand in today's money. With all that in place, they begin the second part of the plan. Hey, Malloy. Good to see you, man. Say, what happened to your arm? Yeah, the other day I got in a fight with a goose. Got bit pretty bad. Been leaking pus for about a week now. But hey, I got the breadcrumbs. Okay, well anyway, guess what? Your tab now has unlimited credit. Oh, cool. Well, what's that mean? It means you can drink as much as you want and we can't stop you. Bet. Naturally, he orders shot after shot and the gang happily complies. It gets to the point where Malloy's drinking way more than should be humanly possible. But instead of dropping dead or passing out, after a while he's just like, "Aight. See ya." Within 24 hours, he's back at it, giving his liver the equivalent of a Tyson uppercut and being no worse for wear. This went on for a few days before the boys were like, alright, we need to up the ante here, and decided to replace Malloy's typical shots with wood alcohol, otherwise known as methanol. Keep in mind, as little as 4% methanol by volume is enough to make a moonshiner go blind, and just 2 shots of the pure stuff should be able to kill a man. But Malloy slammed back just as much as he normally would, totally none the wiser, and was like, still see ya. Anyway, see ya. They tried again for a few more nights, he was fine. Soaked some expired oysters in wood alcohol and fed them to him, he was fine. They gave him a sandwich made from rotten sardines and carpet tacks. Motherfucker asks for another. They were like, alright, this man's got a lead belly, there's gotta be something else we can do. So one day after he passed out, they drove him half a mile to the park, tossed him out into the snow, took off his shirt, and soaked his head and chest in water. They drive away thinking they've finally done it, but when Marino clocked in at the speakeasy the next day, Malloy's already there, just hanging out, barely even sniffling. Finally they just said fuck it, ran the guy down with their buddy's cab, and backed over him again for good measure. For once, Malloy didn't show up the next day. The gang was cautiously optimistic. After all, there are 60-year-olds who bite the dust just from one wrong step in the shower, let alone the force of a half-ton of steel going 50 miles an hour. They called all the local hospitals and morgues in an attempt to find where he ended up, but they couldn't get any useful information from anyone. Lo and behold, 5 days later, the guy limps his way on in once again, with a mighty thirst and little memory of the incident. The gang debated just icing some other random drunkard, cause this one's the fucking juggernaut apparently, but they decided to try one more thing before calling it quits. After Malloy went through his usual blackout routine, they took him up to Murphy's room, stuck a gas line in his mouth, wrapped a towel around his face, and turned it on. Within an hour, Malloy finally stopped breathing. After countless attempts on his life, at long last, they were successful. However, as you might have realized, the final method of murder was a far cry from the simple elegance of the original plan, which is something they never really thought about until it was too late. Hey guys, what's poppin'? My brother, Michael Malloy, is dead. Can I have money now? Oh dear, I'm so sorry. What happened? What? Why did the man die? Pneumonia? I see. And when can we see the body exactly? So, after a quick medical examination, the men were convicted of first-degree murder and attempted fraud, and subsequently sentenced to death by electric chair. And while the executioner flipped the switch, Malloy's ghost sat in the corner, chowing down on some antifreeze and sardine soles, just laughing his ass off. Moral of the story, life is unpredictable. That's why we have insurance for it in the first place. If you ever commit fraud against life, just know that life's gonna commit a little fraud back. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, today I'll be discussing the alcoholic equivalents of the various allotropes of carbon. For those of you that don't know, an allotrope is just the various forms that carbon atoms can arrange themselves into. But anyway, let's get started. So amorphous carbon is like beer. It's the first form to ever be produced by humans, likely by accident. It's also the weakest form. It has a bunch of varieties, most of which taste terrible, and you need a whole lot of it if you want to have a good cookout. Graphite is like wine. It's almost as old as amorphous carbon, having been used by humans since ancient times. However, it's significantly stronger. Up until recently, only the rich could really get much enjoyment out of it. But today, most individuals can use it if they choose, but not all varieties are equal. Diamond is like vodka. First of all, it's very strong, the strongest form that's likely to be found in the average household. It's typically valued based on its purity and clarity, though flavored varieties do exist. Though it can be manufactured right here at home, most people seem to prefer it when it's from far-off lands. And remember never to use too much of it or else you might regret it later. Graphene is like brandy. It's similar to graphite in structure, but it's put through a process to make it more pure, and as a result, it's much stronger. Fullerenes are like absinthe. It's not as mainstream as the other varieties, mostly only being used by the intellectual types. It's also claimed to have a bunch of properties not shared by any other form out there. But despite all its hype, it has little real-world application currently. Finally, carbine is like pure alcohol. Despite its simplicity, it's extremely difficult to produce with current methods, except in very small amounts. If you were to have a bunch of it, however, it would be more than twice as strong as diamonds. Hopefully, this forced analogy has been at least vaguely informational. But anyway, that's all for today. I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, had a bad day? Well, could be worse. You could be living in a world without modern anesthetic. Today, we'll be talking about some surgical procedures carried out long before the development of medicine as we know it today. Now, once you go back a certain distance, the line between operation and mutilation is pretty thin. So, for our purposes, surgery refers to any bodily manipulation carried out with the intent of fixing some injury or illness. And away we go. The very first surgery that we have historical evidence for dates as far back as 6500 BC. It's called trepanning, which is a nice word for carving someone's frickin' skull open using nothing but a rock. Maybe a rock on a stick if you were lucky. In all seriousness though, you can see that a good deal of care went into the procedure, which lets us know that this isn't just the result of random injury. Many skulls even showed signs of healing around the holes, meaning plenty of the people who underwent this whole thing just got up and went about their day afterwards. Alright, hold on, you say. This all sounds guano insane. No way this was that common of an occurrence. Well friend, if you've been watching this channel long enough, you should know that if you give human beings the benefit of the doubt, chances are they'll prove you wrong. In fact, so far, over 1,500 trepanned skulls have been dug up all across the globe, from Europe to China and even the Americas. This means that between 5 and 10% of all skulls that we've found from the Neolithic period have had at least one man-made hole scraped into them. To put it this way, based on that data, there's a greater probability of someone born in the late Stone Age having their brain matter exposed by some shaman with a chunk of flint than someone born in the USA being a redhead. To this day, nobody really knows why this was such a common practice, but most theories tend to revolve around the idea of releasing some kind of dark supernatural force from the patient. Man, I'm getting real sick of all these evil entities infecting our minds and bodies. Huh, you can say that again. I tell you, I need these demons like I need a hole in the head. No way. Fast forward to 600 BC. Over in India, there lived a guy called Maharshi Susruta. Now, this guy was a medical mastermind. He wrote a treatise known as Susruta Samhita, which described countless different conditions, treatments, and yes, even surgeries, one of which is the first recorded instance of rhinoplasty. That means nose job. A hornbill's a type of bird. I'm here too. Anyway, here's how it's done according to Susruta. First, you get them plastered, obviously. Second, you use a leaf to measure out the part of the nose you want fixed. Then, you use the leaf to cut off a flap of skin from the cheek or forehead of the patient. This part's important though. You gotta remember to leave a little piece of it still attached. Otherwise, you just got a chunk of dirty dead face meat on your hands. Now, wherever you're looking to stick the new flesh on, you rub that part raw with a knife. Also, you're gonna want to stick 2 plant stalks in their nostrils so their nose keeps its proper shape. Slap the skin on, suture it, dust it with licorice powder for some reason, and cover it with cotton. Sesame oil should be regularly applied until the skin is fully healed. If you're like me, I already do that by default, so it shouldn't be an issue. Finally, at long last, your sniffer is reborn. Don't worry, you still look like a freak, just slightly less so. Moving on, our next surgery took place in 10th century Spain on Sancho I of Leon, otherwise known as Sancho the Fat. Now, normally back in the day, having some meat on your bones was a sign of wealth and power and all that, but this guy was like TLC documentary tier, to the point where he could hardly function as a human being. So his constituents said, "Greetings, your thickness. Yeah, you can't be king anymore on account of you keep breaking every horse we give you, and nobody wants to wash between your accordion-like neck folds no more." After his adipose got him deposed, Sancho decided to seek medical help for his condition, under the oversight of well-reputed physician Hasdai ibn Shaprut, which is an anagram for paintbrush aids. Now, if there's one thing that medieval man understood, it's practicality. Lap band, gastric bypass, belly balloon, these all exist to help people who don't have the self-control to stop eating so much on their own. But Dr. Chapadout didn't believe in beating around the bush. He said, well, why don't we just stop the patient from shoving food into his own greasy maw in the first place, and decided to just up and stitch the dude's lips together. After the operation, the only nutrients that Sancho received came through a straw, in the form of a mixture known as thoriaca, which was a complex blend of several herbs, fruits, and seeds, including opium. It was basically the closest thing you could find to lean at the time, and lean he became, losing around half his weight before ascending to the throne once more. So this is the part of the video where I pander to the desires of the audience. If there's one thing I know you internet people can't get enough of, it's things going inside people's eyeballs. Let's talk about cataract surgery. The art of dealing with people's clouded lenses has been around for millennia, believe it or not. That Susruta guy from earlier actually talked about the most common procedure for cataracts for most of civilized history, which is known as the couching method. Couching is done by taking a sharp object like a needle or a thorn, and ever so gently stabbing their eye hole at weird angles until the lens moves out of the way. No lasers, no sedatives, no paralytics, just a rusty old pin and some elbow grease, the way God intended. The majority of the time, this operation didn't work, usually just damaging the already blind eye irreparably. Shocker, right? And even if it did go as planned, you still, didn't have a lens in your eye, so you essentially went from, I can't tell if I'm dead or not, to, ah yes, it is quite yellow out today. By God. Something moved somewhere. A slightly more refined version of this operation is the suction method, which dates back to at least the 10th century AD, if not older. This procedure is described as requiring, quote, a large incision in the eye, a hollow needle, and an assistant with an extraordinary lung capacity. Though this reads like the setup to the world's most horrifying party trick, it's actually the bare minimum number of tools needed to completely extract the lens from the eye. In case you didn't pick up on how, here's a diagram. This method generally saw a greater success rate and fewer complications than its non-extracting counterpart. So hopefully you can sleep well tonight knowing that the number of human beings who have sucked a piece of somebody's living eyeball through a straw is above zero. Anywho, let's all just be thankful that we live in an era where procedures like these are a thing of the past. Now remember kids, even though the surgeries I described here do sound pretty easy to pull off, please don't try them at home. But if you do, please put it on LiveLeak afterwards. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and watch you for thanking. Wait, shit, I meant. Hey kids, if you've ever been Black Friday shopping or visited the Diablo subreddit recently, chances are you've encountered mass hysteria at some point. Mass hysteria is known medically as mass psychogenic illness, or MPI for short. It's basically just when a bunch of people start acting a fool for no discernible reason other than maybe a stressful environment. Being that this sort of thing is naturally very noticeable, there's loads of documented cases found all throughout history. Let's take a look at a few. This first one is what made me make this video in the first place. So one day sometime in the Middle Ages, a group of nuns in a French convent were enjoying a quiet, uneventful day, until one of them decided to start meowing. You know, like a cat. You'd think this would last all of 4 seconds before another nun was like, "Excuse me, Sister Gertrude, would you kindly cut the shit?" But instead, another nun joined in, and another, until basically the entire nunnery was exchanging mouths like a group of communist trading card enthusiasts. This wasn't just a one-time thing either, it basically became integrated into their way of life. It's said that on a given day, they would stand there meowing in each other's faces for hours at a time. Could you imagine being the first outsider to witness this? You might laugh now, but as they say, everybody gangsta till the nuns start meowing. I'd void my bowels and move to Malaysia without even thinking. Miles more terrifying than this pile of garbage. As you can imagine though, after a while it stopped being scary and just got annoying, leading to the neighbors calling in a band of soldiers to deal with the situation. Hey guys, can we talk to you for a sec about Yeah, that. All due respect, but we have orders to literally beat the hell out of you with whips till you start acting like people again. Sorry sir, it's just force of habit. Haha, habit. Seriously though, we would rather go to hell for throttling a gaggle of nuns than put up with another minute of your bullshit, caprese? Our next event took place in the parish of Fatima, Portugal in the year 1917. It all started with 3 shepherd children, ages 10, 9, and 7 respectively. They were like, "Greetings, fellow Portugueseites. We've been seeing visions of the Virgin Mary, and she told us to tell you that some real crazy shit's gonna go down in the sky on October 13th. Now, if 3 random farm children started spouting out prophecies to the public today, you'd say, "Ha, what tomfoolery. Go play in some dirt, you dirty little dirt baby." But keep in mind, the past is a different country. And Portugal's a different country, so that's like different countries squared you gotta think about. Plus this was during World War I, a time where a lot of people were holding out for a miracle to begin with. So the kid's story was actually picked up and even spread by local newspapers, to the point where, when the day finally came, at least 30,000 people gathered in Fatima to witness the alleged miracle. Lo and behold, on that day, the sun began zooming around, careening towards Earth and sending rays of multicolored light cascading across the sky, creating a light show like nobody's ever seen. Keep in mind, this happened in the 20th century, way after the era where belief in divine jiggery and or pokery was considered mandatory, so naturally there were plenty of skeptics and non-believers present, and even they saw it all happen. Or so they thought. How do we know the sun didn't really whiz around haphazardly that day, Well, number 1, use your frickin' brain. And number 2, accounts differed wildly from person to person. While some say the sun zigged hither, others say it zagged thither, and others still said it shined a brilliant yellow and stayed perfectly still. As such, it was eventually concluded that the event was just a combination of MPI and weird eye stuff from too much sun staring. Although I'd like to believe it was real, just that Jesus' illusion skill was way higher than his alteration at the time. Yep, that's it. Sam's going to hell. Why, for blasphemy? Trust me, that was the least offensive part of that joke. Our next tale took place in 1962 in Tanganyika, which was basically just the beta version of Tanzania. The nation had just declared its independence from Britain the previous year, and with the future so uncertain, tensions were naturally running high around this time. One little girl in a Tanganyikan school ended up handling the stress in a bit of an unusual way. Rather than overeating or staring at her ceiling for hours like a normal person, she just started laughing, and laughing, and laughing. Pretty soon, her classmates at the all-girls school she attended began to join in, to the point where 95 of the 159 students caught the gigglies, which lasted anywhere from a few hours to 16 days straight. Beyond just the unprovoked cackling, other odd behavior included aimless running and occasional violence. The problem got so severe that the school was forced to close down temporarily, leading to the chortlers roaming the streets, spreading the affliction further. Thousands of people from all strata came to be affected, with 13 additional schools being shut down in the progress. Over the course of the hysteria, several other symptoms began to present themselves as well, ranging from obvious ones such as breathing problems, fainting, random screaming, to more anomalous things like rashes. Despite all this, no physical cause could be found, leaving MPI as the only explanation. The epidemic finally died down after between 6 and 18 months of day in, day out laughter, depending on the village. While this whole thing likely sucked for most people involved, it probably could have been worse. A lot of the time when I'm alone, I'll think to myself, man, if I ever go full schizo, I hope I'm one of the laughy ones, not one of the screamy ones. With this story in mind, just maybe, if I put my mind to it and believe hard enough, I can be both. Flashback to the year 1518 to the city of Strasbourg, at the time part of the HRE. A woman named Mrs. Trophy began fervently dancing in the streets for no discernible reason, for hours, then days. All without music, of course. Her only breaks consisted of occasional food intake and passing out from exhaustion when night came. If you saw that today, you'd just be like, ha! Drugs. But apparently people found it pretty inspiring because within a week, 34 others had joined in, and after a month, there were around 400. This wasn't your casual bobbing up and down neither. This shit made Zumba look like Tai Chi. Here's the best modern day simulation I could find. Now imagine that both of those people were the same person and you got the dancing plague. This would take a toll on any healthy person, let alone a medieval city dweller, but despite bleeding feet and aching bones, they just kept going. In fact, they went so hard for so long that a good portion straight up fucking died from cardiac arrest. It got to the point where around 15 dancers were kicking the bucket every day before the city decided they had to do something about it. They managed to rule out any divine or supernatural causes, which was necessary just because, back in medieval times, it was fucking stupid. They eventually surmised that it was a natural disease caused by too much hot blood, as per that whole four humors thing that was popular at the time. As for a cure, their prescription was, get this, more dancing. I can see where they were coming from. It's pretty sound logic. If you got a song stuck in your head, you play it till you're sick of it, same kind of thing. But here's where they goofed. The authorities actually went out of their way to facilitate the dancing, setting up a big stage area and even hiring musicians to keep the afflicted moving. All this achieved was attracting more passerby who were like, man, mass psychogenic illness looks frickin' epic, let's get in on that, causing the contagion to become even more widespread. Seeing that their solution backfired, the city then went the other way and completely banned any public dancing. Those who still showed signs of the mania were subsequently carted off to the Shrine of St. Vitus, where an exorcism-like ritual was performed on them. This ended up being highly effective, presumably for no other reason than that the dancers believed it would work, and after nearly 2 months, the plague was quelled. While this whole thing was most likely a case of good old-fashioned MPI, some historians believe it might have been egged on in part by ergotism, a state of psychosis brought on by eating tainted bread, which I talked a little bit about in this video. Ding! Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, as you know, many people struggle with weight management. Usually that means they can't keep the pounds off, but if you're like me, you might struggle with the opposite problem. Seriously, this drawing is only a slight exaggeration. So, I'm gonna teach you how to turn that dank lankin into skank bankin. Quick disclaimer, I am not a nutritionist, I'm mostly talking out my ass here, but I'm reasonably sure that most of the claims I make in this video are factually correct. Alright, let's do this. Tips Tuesday! Tip number 1, eat a da meat. It builds muscle. You know why? 'Cause it is muscle. I'm talking the beef, the pork, the chickie. It's all good. There is no better source of dense protein out there. Tip number 2, peanut butter. Any nutritionist can tell you that a balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats is necessary for a healthy diet. Peanut butter is that balance. Very calorie dense as well, about 90 in each tablespoon. You're gonna wanna opt for chunk style rather than smooth, as it is closer to raw peanuts. Tip number 3, no coffee. But Sam, you say, I need the coffee for my energy. Well, guess what? That's a bunch of pussy bullshit. A man should be running on pure willpower alone. Coffee is a stimulant that makes you waste energy. It makes you poop, waste the nutrients. And it's an appetite suppressant, so you can't stuff your gut as good. Tip number 4, supplement with fats. Making spinach? That's good. It's got the nutrients. But it's also got like 6 calories total. Throw a tablespoon of butter on top of it, and suddenly you up to 106 calories. Don't go with just butter though, it might turn you into a racist. I'm Paula Deen. Instead, diversify your oils. Olive, peanut, coconut, especially coconut, pop that shit on potato, that's the fazool. Just don't drink crude oil or else you will die. Or turn into a billionaire, but I wouldn't risk it. Tip number 5. Milk. It's like water, except better, 'cause it's got proteins and lactose. But Sam, I don't want my friends seeing me drinking milk. That's what children do. I will punt you over my house, 'cause that is more pussy bullshit. They might laugh now, but they won't be laughing once they see your sick gains. Just don't drink milk all the time. You could die. Okay, probably not, but milk is not too good a hydrator, so just drink water too. Do both. Both is good. Tip number 6. Eggs. Protein good for chicks. Protein good for attracting chicks. Now the egg consists of 2 parts, as you know, the yolk and the white, also known as the albumin. However, the Al Pacino is not nearly as dense as the yolk as far as calories and proteins are concerned. So if you wanted to get technical, you could ditch the Alpine Ridge and just eat the yolks. You won't miss out on much, as the pair have similar protein contents, just the Al-Qaeda also has a lot of water weight. In conclusion, egg whites are for gays. That's why they look like jizz. Tip number 7. Hey Junior, what you drinking there? Pepsi? Are you shitting me? Tip number 7. No sodas. They contain empty calories, for one. Secondly, carbonation is a waste of space. Produces gas, wastes valuable stomach space, so you can't eat as much. You know why they call it pop? It's 'cause I'll pop a cap in your ass if I catch you drinking it. Tip number 8. Most important, exercise. This is the sole tip that separates the fit fucks from the fat fucks. Obviously you're gonna want to lift, but you should definitely get some cardio in there as well. But Sam, you say, everybody knows that cardio kills gains. I will punt you into the stratosphere because that is more, say it with me, pussy bullshit. Sure, an hour of jogging might lose you 400 calories, but you also get all of these benefits. So follow these tips and you'll be swole in no time. I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, today I'm going to talk about a few slang words that I never understood. First is chicken legs. Now if you know me, you know that I'm leaner than lean, so I've received this insult a couple times, hey chicken legs. But chicken legs really aren't that skinny. Here's a diagram of my leg, right? And here's the average chicken leg. Look at that. I wish I had that kind of calf definition. That's sexy as fuck. There are bodybuilders with less meat on their bones than that. And considering the fact that most people have interacted with the drumstick at some point in their lives, I'm frankly dumbfounded that anyone ever thought to use this to refer to skinny people. Then there's socking someone. Hey man, I'm trying to think of a new slang word for punching someone in the face really hard. Like just destroying someone with your fists. Got any ideas? How about one of the softest, gentlest, and most unassuming objects found in one's entire house? That's like kicking someone in the dick and being like, whoa bro, you just got feathered. Fuck you, don't try to downplay my suffering. If anything, I got shin bashed in the dick bag. That's the proper level of vulgarity relative to the situation. Anyway, it would make a little more sense if you said gloved, because at least those are socks for your hands. But no, it's nonsense. Next is blow, in reference to cocaine. It's a form of air movement, so I guess this one is like half correct, but it could still lead to a lot of confusion. Yo, y'all wanna do some blow? Oh gee whiz, well okie dokie. Oh, I'm feeling it. It's kicking in. Oh doggy, that's some nifty blow you got there, eh? Get out of my house. Next is nuts. When somebody is nuts, it means they're wild, they're crazy, they live life on the edge, right? What the fuck is so exciting about this? Finally, box. So box is a common slang word for one's lady bits, right? Now I've only been around 2 vaginas in my life. I came out of one of them when I was born, and I spent most of my time around the other one with my eyes closed, so my knowledge on that subject might be a little shaky. However, I have been around hundreds of thousands of boxes in my life. I know those inside and out, so that should make up for it. And let me tell you, these two things could not be less similar in shape. You see, boxes have corners. If your pussy has corners, you should probably start taking the tampons out of the container before you put them in. Likewise, if you compare the properties of either object, you'll notice that they're basically opposites in every way, so as a slang word, it's totally unfitting. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Ella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, the human spirit is a very powerful thing. With the right temperament, it can allow us to survive things you wouldn't believe. However, some people are stronger than others. For example, I've never so much as broken a bone in my life. Haven't been hospitalized since that first time 20 years ago. So I'm like 90% certain if I'm ever forced to dance with death, my soul's pussying out to the great beyond first thing. On the other end of the spectrum, you got guys like Phineas Gage. Gage was a 25-year-old railroad worker in mid-19th century Vermont. He and his crew were busy gang blasting rock to prepare the roadbed for a newly planned route. This involves a big hole being drilled into the ground, filled with gunpowder, and packed down using a tamping iron. Well, being the gentleman and scholar that he is, Gage decides to lean forward and look directly into the hole, right? Now, the first rule of gun safety is to never look down the front of a gun. Everyone knows that. Gage basically just turned the earth into a gun and decided to put his head right in front of its gaping barrel, and wouldn't you know it, the powder goes off. The tamping iron shoots up into his cheek, moseys right on through his frickin' brain, and goes soaring out the other side, landing 80 feet away, all smeared with blood and thought juice. Now, by and large, Gage should have dropped dead immediately and been thrown into a ravine for his blatant disregard for OSHA regulations, and that would have been the end of it. But I guess Shiva Gautama Christ-chan, the one true god, decided Gage still had unfinished business down here on Shit Outta Luck 3, because after a few minutes of twitching on the ground, he got up, looked around, and thought, well, now's a good time as any for my yearly checkup. According to the doctor he went to, while Gage was retelling the story of what happened, he suddenly started vomiting all over the place, the effort of which, and I quote, pushed out about half a teacup full of the brain, which fell upon the floor. He didn't say what they did with it after. I'm picturing his dog just running over and immediately scarfing it down, then being plagued with the memories of a human railroad worker for the rest of his life. In the months following, Gage made a near complete recovery, physically anyway. He did lose a bit of his mind, which caused him to lose his mind a bit. Whereas Gage was once an upstanding, hardworking citizen, his untimely brain blast transformed him into an angry, incoherent drunkard, mumbling, quote, the grossest profanity whenever he deemed fit, and showing little to no regard for human life whatsoever. Naturally, he was fired from his job at the railroad, so Gage ended up wandering the earth, earning money any way he could. For a while, he hung out at Barnum's American Museum in New York City, basically making an exhibit of himself, standing there with the tamping iron like, hi, this went through my brain. Bye! He later had a stint as a farmhand in California and a stagecoach driver in Chile, which, I don't know who let the guy with severe brain trauma and no depth perception drive a vehicle, but whatever. Over time, he actually became a lot more functional, until finally, 10 years later, when his brain remembered, oh yeah, I shouldn't exist, leading to Gage having a bunch of seizures and dying at age 36. A similar story happened with one Ron Hunt in 2003. He was an American construction worker who was drilling a hole above his head, when the ladder he was standing on decided to give way, leading to Hunt landing face first on a 1.5-inch auger drill bit. The drill went straight through his left eye and out the back of his skull. To give you a reference of what 1.5 inches of drill looks like, here's the actual x-ray that doctors took when Hunt arrived at the hospital. Miraculously, the drill ended up just kind of pushing his brain out of the way, leading to no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Matter of fact, Hunt was perfectly lucid while the doctors tried to figure out the best way to take the thing out of his head. Initially, they considered cutting it out, but that would have been too messy, so eventually they decided to literally just unscrew it from his head, like, alright, hold him still now. Oh, you fucking MILF. Lefty Lucy. Does that mean the top or the bottom? What? It's a rotating circle. And, okay, you hold on for one sec. Look, one way the top goes left, one way the bottom. So which? Clearly the one on top. Why? Tell me why. Why clearly? Same reason north is up on the map. It's just common practice. Alright, well, sorry for not subscribing to your Eurocentric propaganda, Dan, you soggy cunt. Anyway, what were we doing? If you think Hunt was just a little too lucky with his incident, don't worry. According to Snopes, he was self-employed and didn't have insurance, so while the accident didn't ruin his life, you can sleep easy knowing that hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical bills and rehabilitation costs probably did. Our next tale revolves around Greg Rasmussen, a British-born animal conservationist who was studying wildlife in Zimbabwe. One day, he got reports of a highly endangered rhino being spotted in the area, so Greg took to the skies in a single-passenger plane to track the beast. Fate was looking down at Greg that day, and after a moment, it said, No,
Rhino must die.
And a huge gust of wind came out of nowhere, sending Greg into a tailspin, crash landing right in the middle of the untamed African bush. When Greg woke up, he found that his legs looked like used up tubes of toothpaste, so he was essentially trapped right where he was. Arguably worse than that was the fact that Greg was dehydrated before he even took off, hoping to get water at his destination. And just when things looked like they couldn't get any worse, they got worse. A group of elephants showed up and started harassing and straight up stampeding at Greg. With no other option, he starts banging on the wreckage as hard as he could. The elephants went, "Ha!" and decided to leave him alone. He was also approached by a pack of hyenas and actual lionesses on the hunt. But fortunately, animals are all morons, so the same trick worked on them too. Greg spent an entire day and night pinned under the wreckage, fighting off wildlife, severe dehydration, and extreme temperatures before finally being rescued the next morning. Incredibly, after over 100 operations, doctors managed to get Greggy's leggies up and running again. Although he was now 3 inches shorter, which is probably for the best, because now they can just stick the keys to the plane on top of the fridge so he never has another incident like this again. That's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, when most people think of the Middle Ages, they think of them as being like humanity's dumb teenage years, where all we did was play harpsichord in our room and burn heretics with our friends. But that's not entirely true. In fact, I would argue that the medieval era saw just as much genius as any other period in time. It's just most of that genius went towards finding new and creative ways to brutally slaughter those you disagree with. Here's a few highlights. First, we'll talk about the werewolf. So, as you can imagine, medieval castles were not easy to break into. They were basically like those jungle gym things at Chuck E. Cheese's. Massive in size, intentionally confusing layout, security everywhere, and by the end of your visit, you'd probably end up with some kind of disease. So in order to help penetrate fortresses, medieval armies would often utilize siege weapons, one of the most popular of which was the trebuchet. Now this device is interesting enough on its own, but it gets better. So around 1300 AD, King Edward I of England was in the process of invading Scotland. However, one fortress, known as Stirling Castle, was giving him a lot of trouble. He laid siege to the building for many months without any real progress. Then one day, he woke up and had a revelation. Hey guys, listen, why are we wasting our time building all these regular-sized trebuchets when we could just build one giant one and call it a day? So that's what he did. This gargantuan war machine was known as the Werewolf and stood at around 6 stories tall. To give a bit of perspective, this is about as tall as King Kong was in his largest film depiction. So basically, picture a giant fucking ape launching boulders like they're baseballs, and you've got a pretty good idea of what the werewolf was capable of. It was so intimidating that when the Scots saw the English constructing the beast outside the castle, they immediately surrendered out of fear. But then Edward was like, "Ha, fuck that, I'm gonna test this bad boy out," and proceeded to take pot shots on the castle anyway. Another devious product of the Middle Ages was a flammable substance known as Greek fire. Contrary to popular belief, Greek fire was not invented by the ancient Greeks. Rick Riordan, you lying prick. It was actually invented in the 7th century AD by the Byzantines, who happened to inhabit Greece at the time. Historians still don't know exactly what it was made of, but they do know that it acted a lot like napalm, sticking to ships, sticking to people, even floating and continuing to burn on the surface of the water. The Byzantines also had these siphon-like tubes that they'd put on the front of their boats to pour Greek fire on the enemy, kinda like makeshift flamethrowers. These were retired pretty quickly though, mostly because when you put the words makeshift and flamethrower next to each other, you're bound to run into some problems eventually. Our next bright idea comes from a woman known as Olga of Kiev. So Olga was a princess who ruled the area around the capital of modern-day Ukraine from 945 to 963 AD. And she had quite a track record for being just a total badass. For example, the Drevlians, a tribe of people under Kiev's control, once sent 20 men to Kiev in order to convince Olga to marry their prince, under the pretense that if they did marry, the prince could claim her rule over Kiev. In response, she had all 20 of them buried alive. She then sent a letter to the prince saying she accepted his proposal, but she would need a bunch of his most distinguished governors to escort her on the journey. Once the men showed up, Olga was like, "Hey guys, long journey, huh? How'd you like to take a bath in this here bathhouse?" They were like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." "Okay, have fun, you guys." Man, it's like a sauna in here. It is a sauna, dipshit. You have a point. So long story short, this lady just did not give a heck. My favorite story about her starts with her besieging a Drevlian city that refused to pay tribute to her. The people in the city were already well aware of the type of rampaging that Olga was capable of, so they were already scared shitless. But when she showed up, she was like, "Alright, you know what guys, I'm gonna play nice. Just bring me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each household and I'll be on my way." Okay. What are they for exactly? We're We're just hungry. I mean, we got some food too. We could just give... I'm sorry, did I fucking stutter? Alright, birds it is. Then, once the creatures were in Olga's hands, she had each of her soldiers tie a cloth-bound piece of sulfur to one of the birds' feet, which was then set alight. The birds were then released all at once, and when they flew back into the city, their nests acted like little piles of tinder, resulting in nearly every house in the entire city erupting in flames simultaneously. And while the whole place burned to the ground, Olga just sat and watched. By the way, it's worth mentioning that, after her death, Olga was canonized as a Catholic saint, presumably around the same time as Saint Tiffany, who went around pushing in the soft spots of babies, and Saint Jerry the Goat Fucker, who, as the name implies, fucked a lot of goats. In conclusion, pay your taxes. To my loyal subscribers, I'll see you in 3 months. I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, today I'm going to talk about the Great Emu War. So here's what happened, right? Our story begins in Australia, home of the upside down whopper. The year is 1932. A very large chunk of the country's population lives on homesteads, just putting seeds in the ground and waiting for food to show up, you know. But their lives are hard. Firstly, Australian soil kind of blows. It's pretty terrible for farming. Like on a scale from Margaret Thatcher's corpse to Octomom, Australia's soil is a solid Hillary Clinton in fertility. Secondly, the whole Great Depression thing's going on, which automatically makes everything suck worse. And third, and possibly most important, is the emu infestation. These gangly dill holes were all over the place, just walking on crops and crapping on crops and crapping on walks and cropping on craps and crabbing on docks and captain on the rocks. You get the idea. So the government evaluated the situation. They were like, well, let's weigh our options here. As a government, we could start spending even more money to secure the welfare of our citizens through this socioeconomic crisis, money that we barely even have. Or, alternatively, we could just start fucking slaughtering emus, so at least it looks like we're helping. So that's what they did. Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Australian military was put in command of the operation, and he had a total of 2 soldiers at his disposal, each of which had a light machine gun. Additionally, the pair was given a total of 10,000 rounds of ammunition to be spent on taking out emus. So on paper that sounds like a piece of cake. They're basically just big turkeys on stilts, so how hard could it be? Well, apparently, pretty frickin' hard. Let me learn you kids a thing or two about emus. First of all, emus are tough as hell. Their bodies are basically like meat-laden tanks. They can definitely take a bullet or 3 and still keep running long enough to get away. Secondly, these fuckers have tactics. Like guerrilla warfare, it ain't got shit on emu warfare. They start out in a big herd or flock or pod, I don't really know, let me Google it. Okay, a group of emus is technically called a mob. So you got a big mob of emus, right? And as soon as they sense danger, they break up into a bunch of little mobs and start scattering in every direction. So if you're spraying them down with a machine gun, you can't just whip it around all over the place. You have to focus your fire on one group at a time, meaning most of the others could get away pretty easily. I don't know if they had like a huddle beforehand or if this is just some coincidental product from their ridiculous bird minds, but it was effective either way. So between these two things, taking out the emus ended up being a huge struggle. Here's the story on what happened. So the crew went out in search of emus. The first time they found a mob, they started shooting before the guns were in range, so most of the emus got away. The second time, they waited until the emus were closer, but then the gun jammed, so most of the emus got away. And this sort of pattern went on for a while. At one point, they tried getting on the back of a truck first so they could chase down the mob, but the truck wasn't fast enough to catch up, and the ride was so bumpy that they couldn't aim properly, so most of the emus got away. By the time they got a fourth of the way through their ammo, after 2,500 shots, only 300 or so had been killed, which is tiny compared to the 20,000 birds said to be roaming the outback. At this point, they were like, alright, if I have to look at one more of these Jimmy-legged big bird wannabes, I'm gonna start screaming, so you know what? Fuck it. Let the farmers handle it. Then the farmers were like, hey jackholes, we're still starving out here. You still haven't given us those subsidies you promised. We had to feed the kids fucking dingo meat, which, you know, it's a nice change of pace to have the kids eating the dingoes for once, but that's beside the point. Could you dicks keep at least trying to help us? Thanks. The guys were like, alright, don't get your bogans in a bundle. We'll keep going if only to prove a point. So they kept going, just finding mobs, thinning them out slightly, rinse and repeat, until finally they only had like 100 bullets left. In total, the unit only had 986 confirmed kills. Some emus might have also died from their wounds after the fact, but still, a very large portion of the hordes was still alive. So the military was forced to surrender for real this time. Yes, that's right kids. The emus won the war. Of course, their victory didn't last too long, because after the failed operation, the government put out a bounty on the emus. And that worked pretty well. Something like 50,000 bounties ended up being cashed out over 6 months in 1934. So the lesson here, kids, is that if you want to commit mass murder, don't crowdfund. crowdsource. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, you've probably seen this scene in TV or movies at some point. A couple of people end up stranded on a desert island, totally isolated from all civilization. It seems like there's no hope for survival, but then one of them looks 3 feet to the left and, oh my god, it's a tree full of fully grown, plump, delicious, smiling, golden-skinned bananas. Amazing. We're saved for the time being. Hey, don't eat those. They're made of lies. See? Listen, why do fruit exist? For a delicious, nutritious snack for humans and animals alike to enjoy? You know, you didn't have to go throwing him into the sun like that.
You're next, Susan!
How did you know my name?
I created you. Anyway, as most of you probably know, fruit are a thing because nature figured out, hey, if you put a little bit of deliciousness around your seed, it'll convince some idiot bird or something to carry your baby off to faraway lands, right? But then humans showed up and were like, hey, that's pretty nifty. Listen, is it cool if we selectively breed you for thousands of years to give you horrific deformities to crank up that whole deliciousness part a couple hundred notches? Alright, cool. Let's take a look at bananas, specifically the Cavendish variety that we all know and love. On the inside, we got like 2% seeds, 93% delectable banana meat, and 5% that brown part at the bottom that your mom says is perfectly fine to eat but you still don't trust. Great for a snack, terrible for reproducing efficiently. Meanwhile, check out the thing on the right here. That's Musa acuminata, one of the suspected ancestors of today's nanners. Much smaller and jam-packed with seeds, with just enough flesh in there to make it worth some smelly primate's time to crack open a yellow one with the boys. Here's another wild type banana, Musa balbesiana. Less sweet, way starchier, harder to get into, hella seeds, same shit different day really. But hey, if you stick that boy in the ground, you've got an okay chance of making a new banana tree. You bury a modern banana, all you're gonna end up with is a dirty banana. And not that one club in Miami, I mean an actual dirty banana. That's because, like a lot of cultivated fruit, culinary bananas are so inbred and malformed that they can't produce offspring even if they wanted to. So, word of advice for you men out there, if ever a lady points out how poorly endowed you are, just show her this JPEG. She'll say, wow, I didn't realize it was so potent and fertile. You really opened my eyes, thank you. Bananas aren't the only piece of produce to follow this pattern though, not by a long shot. For example, take the watermelon. According to Monsanto, everybody's favorite corporation, the first evidence of human cultivation of the watermelon dates back to Egypt around 5,000 years ago. Back then, they were only 2 inches in diameter, around the size of a tennis ball. The flesh was supposedly tough and bitter, much like that of a tennis ball. Of course, just as the growth of a delicious green baby takes time, so too did the evolution of the modern watermelon. In fact, even as late as the mid-1600s, watermelons looked way different from what we have today, as shown by this painting by Giovanni Stanchi. Notice the thicker rind, the larger seeds, and the weird segmentation on the inside. Definitely a cooler still life subject, but ultimately inferior as a summertime snack. How about vegetables? Tell me, do you enjoy cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, collard greens, broccoli, or cauliflower? I mean, I guess I like broccoli and cauliflower. The rest are kind of gross though.
Wrong! All 6 of these vegetables are actually the same thing. That means you like them all.
That's not how that works. I'll be good. Anyway, these veggies are all just cultivars of the same species, Brassica oleracea, otherwise known as wild cabbage. Every part of the plant is edible to some extent, but there's not much of it to go around. So a bunch of different people throughout history said, alright, what if we just take one specific part of the plant and go fucking insane with it? And that's what they did. Those who bred for giant leaves got kale, going for huge dense flower buds gets you broccoli, juicy engorged lateral leaf buds equal Brussels sprouts, etc. Speaking of segues, let's check out eggplants. The OG eggplant was first domesticated in India, where it can still be found in the wild today. It looks nothing like an eggplant though, they actually resemble little green berries the size of grapes. The only thing it seems to have in common with the classic purple eggplant is how little both of them have in common with an egg. However, if we add the RGB percentage values of their color and merge their shapes, we do get what looks approximately like an egg, so I guess that solves that mystery. This whole transformation really is a testament to man's greatness though. That's like starting out with a frog and selectively breeding them until you end up with Grimace from McDonald's lore. Speaking of which, did you know Grimace used to be evil and have 4 arms? This is a real thing. I'd like to think that when they lopped off his extra limbs, all his evil energy went with him, and now there's just 2 plump purple cylinders scampering around the countryside waiting to pull unsuspecting kids under ball pits, never to be seen again. That's just my McDonald's headcanon though. Anyway, back to whatever we were talking about.
Next is corn, or sorry, maize. I call it corn like a normal person. If it was supposed to be called maize, these would be called mazes. Obviously, that's like the perfect opportunity, but they're not, so put an etymological sock in it. Or stocking. Anyway, I was totally expecting old corn to look like those baby corns you find in Chinese food and literally nowhere else. Turns out those actually are just baby corns. One suspected ancestor of corn is known as teosinti, which looks like this. Gee whiz, Sam, that sure does look like garbage. Good eye, Billy. That's because it was garbage. Whereas modern corn has a kernel count in the hundreds, teosinti only has 5 to 12, with each one being encased in a hard shell that's basically impossible to get into short of boiling it or chipping a tooth. The fact that people decided to domesticate it in the first place makes sense once you realize that most grains are basically the same thing. But honestly, that just makes me wish people figured out how to turn a piece of wheat into a big chunk of whatever to gnaw on. This whole thing disappointed me so much that I actually moved it to the top of my list of reasons not to visit the Mayans if I ever get a time machine. Nonetheless, as you can see, human endeavor can accomplish amazing things. And just as a few thousand years of selective breeding can turn this into this, a few hours of learning a week can turn you into, a more talented and interesting version of you. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kid. Yeah, you. I just got off the phone with the big man upstairs, and he told me that I need to clear a few things up around here. So without further ado, here's 10 pieces of malarkey that you might still be spreading. Number 1. Nobody was ever burned to death at the Salem witch trials. Of the accused, 15 died in prison, 19 were hanged, and 1 was squished to death. That last one is way more interesting than any cremation, by the way. Dude was a badass. His name was Giles Corey. He was 81 years old and so done with the town of Salem's garbage that he wouldn't even dignify the trial with a plea. So the town stuck in between 2 boards and stacked rocks on top of him in an effort to draw out a confession. But every time they tried to get something out of him, all he would say was, "More weight." This went on for 3 solid days until he finally died, never giving any indication as to whether or not he was a witch. One can only wonder. Number 2, the OG Buddha wasn't the obese guy. That's Budai, a Chinese folk character meant to represent Maitreya, aka future Buddha. Now this shirt is double sad. Number 3, Buddha wasn't a god either. He was just a guy named Gautama. Now this shirt is triple sad. Number 4. Ever heard of a vomitorium? Turns out no, it's not a place where Roman nobles would go to make room for more pheasant spleen and lobster eyelids. It's just a big entranceway to the Colosseums that hordes of peasants would spew out of. Number 5. Washington never cut down a cherry tree in his youth. I don't get this one at all. Apparently it's supposed to paint the man in a good light somehow. It's like, Tyler, what the hell happened while we were gone? Where's the tree in the front yard? Oh yeah, that was me. Got bored. Just felt like vandalizing something, you know? Hey, what about my honest character? Number 6, the pyramids weren't actually built by slaves. These workers were respected members of society. They ate meat and worked in 3-month shifts, and even got to be buried right next to the tomb after their death. Matter of fact, that's more than we can say for the people working on man's greatest achievements today. If I spent years of my life helping to build the space station, you're damn right I'd want the Salmonella Memorial Corpse Receptacle floating along right next to it. That would be amazing. Number 7, the Great Wall of China is not the only man-made object visible from space. I don't know where you dipshits got this one from. First of all, there's no way you could see it with the unaided eye. The wall is like 30 meters thick at most, while the distance to outer space is generally recognized to be 100 kilometers up, known as the Kármán line. To give some perspective, that's like me holding up a standard-sized guitar pick from across the entire length of a football field and asking you what color it is. Also, there are plenty of man-made objects that are way bigger in terms of local surface area than the Great Wall, so even if it was visible, there's no way it would be the only one. Number 8, you might have heard this one before. You know, Hitler was a jerk and all, but hey, he made the Autobahn, so at least he was efficient. Actually, Hitler didn't create the Autobahn. It was already there. He just helped expand it into newer territory. In a similar vein, Mussolini didn't make the trains run on time, with most of Italy's infrastructure repairs happening before his rise to power in 1922, and even then they weren't nearly as punctual as he'd like you to believe. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to find something else to like about these fascists. Like Hitler's elegant way of speaking. Or the way Mussolini says spaghetti. Number 9, Iron Maidens weren't actual torture devices used in medieval times. Basically what happened is, some archaeologists in the 1800s saw an old metal coffin and some spikes, and said, yo, wouldn't it be wildin'
if we put these things up in here, so that way if someone goes in it, they get poked in their bits? You are a sick man, Cornelius. I like it. Into the museum it goes. At least Iron Maiden was real. They were as real as it gets. Still are. And don't you forget it. Number 10. Einstein never failed math. He had mastered both integral and differential calculus by the age of 15. 99% chance this one was just made up to make glue eaters feel better about themselves. Well, congratulations, Dimitri. Looks like you failed pre-algebra for the 3rd time. Brady still can't graduate. Well, hey, that means I'm still on par with famous smart science man, so, yeah. Worship me. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, today I'm going to talk about some of the strangest rules, regulations, and ordinances from around the globe. Our first one comes from the United Kingdom. In 1986, Parliament passed what is known as the Salmon Act, which, among other things, made it illegal to handle salmon in suspicious circumstance, whatever that means. Oh shit. Police! Is that fucking fish Jenga? No! Here's another. In many Caribbean countries, it's illegal for a civilian to wear camouflage clothing in public. In other words, you're only allowed to wear really good camouflage. The USA has its fair share of dumb laws, most of which exist on the state level. For example, in Oklahoma, you can be arrested for making an ugly face at a dog. Knowing the average panhandler, it's fortunate that this law doesn't get enforced much, or else half the state would have to brown bag it just by default. And we can check this off. Looking good. Moving on. In the state of Florida, and I don't really know why they'd have to enforce this one, it's considered unlawful to have sex with a porcupine. Police! Hey, guys, it's cool. I'm actually a hedgehog. Oh. Carry on. Another good Florida law, this one really cakes the cake. It's illegal for an unmarried female to go skydiving on Sunday. This is how I imagine that law coming into being, right? We need to ban skydiving. Why is that? The sky is God's domain. Us mortals have no right playing in it. I'm pretty sure God doesn't care about people jumping out of planes for fun. Okay, but how about we just ban people God doesn't like from skydiving, like unwed women? That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. What if it's also the Lord's Day? Okay, that's fair. This next one comes from Russia, where homophobia is fairly commonplace. As one can imagine, gay marriage is a big no-no over there. But in 2013, Vladimir Putin took things a step further, and made it illegal to even tell children that gay people exist. Bolshevik привет, бабушка. Balaklava Soviet Cossack, Kremlin Boyar, Gulag Rasputin, Rubel Anastasia, Tetris Borscht, Red October. Dostoevsky. Stalingrad Kalishnikov Vodka Adidas Track Pant. Suka Bliat. Apparently though, that's not the weirdest rule to come out of a former red state. In China, it's actually illegal to reincarnate without the government's permission. Like a lot of Chinese policies, this law was mostly just put in place to piss off Tibet. Still though, I can see there being a lot of unforeseen consequences here. Come in. Sir, we found this cat in one of the local temples. We suspect it might have been a Buddhist in a past life. Huh. Better execute it just to be safe. By your orders, Captain. Mao. Wait a minute, did you hear that? Mao. There it is again. He said Mao. Oh my god. That must be Chairman Mao reincarnated. Sorry, sir, but the orders have already been given. No! Jesus Christ, you just killed our glorious leader. Oh god, you're right. What have I done? Come in. Sir, we found another cat. Meow. Holy shit, that was fast. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, so we all know that, as far as living things go, humans win, not even a contest. But it turns out, if you hop to the next genome over and look real carefully, you can actually see a basic version of a lot of the stuff that makes us so great. Here's some stories about what chimpanzees can get down to in the right context. Talking about chimp tails. Now, North Korea's Pyongyang Central Zoo has a colorful history, from its humble beginnings as literally just 50 badgers in a fence, to the parrot they taught to recite poetry praising Kim Il-sung, to being the only place in Pyongyang where you can look at a dog legally. It seems the only thing that's remained constant throughout this zoo's life is that it's fucking depressing. Fortunately, both workers and animals alike found ways to cope, one of which is smoking. Azalea the chimp is currently 13 years old and is one of the shining stars of Pyongyang Zoo, purely for her ability to burn through over a pack a day. Now I like a good old-fashioned old-fashioned smoking chimp as much as the next guy. But whereas most zookeepers would probably try to talk her out of something so unhealthy, the North Korean ones actually gave her supplies, just like, feeling trapped, welcome to the club, pal. Her skills are actually pretty impressive. Not only can she use it later, but in a pinch, she also knows that old schoolyard trick of lighting one ciggy with the other. Just a shame that her mind wasn't put towards something a little more healthy or productive. Nah, you know what? That's pretty dope, actually. I'm happy with that. Flashback to 1954. A chimp named Congo was born in the London Zoo. Little did anybody know, this ape was a prodigy. Out of curiosity, one of his zookeepers, named Desmond Morris, decided to give Congo a pencil and a piece of cardboard to see what he'd do. Almost immediately, he started drawing some rudimentary lines and shapes. Morris was like, whoa, and decided to let him try painting on for size. And what he saw was incredible. Congo created these beautiful renderings with a blend of realism and self-expression that would make even the great masters stare in awe. Nah, just fucking with you, they're garbage. But for a non-human, there's still something to be appreciated here. Congo had at least a very basic sense of composition. Like, you can see there's some balance to the images. Matter of fact, when his handler would make shapes on one side of the page, Congo would deliberately mark up the other side to maintain some kind of symmetry. He also had an artist's sense of self-entitlement, because whenever his owner tried to take away a picture before Congo thought it was finished, he'd literally go apeshit, all throwing a fit and screaming till they gave it back. But hey, painting done by a chimp. You know who likes pointless novelties like that? The incredibly rich. In 2005, 3 of Congo's paintings were up for auction next to works by 2 obscure little artists known as Andy Warhol and Pierre-Auguste Renoir. And while the 2 actual artist pieces went completely unsold, these 3 beauties got picked up for the scant price of over $25,000 US. And the guy was like, wow, I felt something for a second there. I really like the watermark on this, by the way. Like, this is my painting done by a chimp. Anyway, next we have this beast called Washoe. Washoe was the first non-human creature to learn to communicate through sign language. That's right, eat shit, Coco. Prior experiments in chimp communication had attempted to teach him some basic spoken language, but after realizing that chimps are physically incapable of making most of the noises we do, they decided signing would be the better option. Washoe was raised in an environment similar to what a human child would experience, complete with toys, clothes, chores, and even being allowed to sit at the dinner table, in spite of what the Bible clearly says about that. The scientists raising Washoe made sure to only communicate in American Sign Language around her, in the hopes of establishing a true conversational rapport. Initially, they took a traditional Pavlovian approach by rewarding proper use of a new sign with food and tickles. But there were a couple problems with this. Firstly, the simple action reward setup meant that Washoe didn't have to really understand the words she was signing, the same way a parrot saying I love you in a YouTube video always does it with those cold, unfeeling eyes. Secondly, Washoe would break into a laughing fit whenever they tickled her, to the point where the lesson would be essentially over. So the researchers abandoned this and instead just let her learn through observation of her caretaker signing, with much better results even in the total absence of reward stimuli. And the only downside was that the job title of designated chimp tickler ceased to exist. In total, Washoe learned around 350 individual signs in ASL, and she'd even use these to formulate novel phrases for new objects. Like one time she wanted to talk about a thermos, but didn't know what a thermos was. She goes, metal cup of drink. Hey, scat! A similar story comes from a chimp named Lucy, who was raised by one Dr. Maurice Temerlin and his wife, Jane. The tale of Lucy's life is why this woman is now officially the 3rd most famous woman named Jane who worked with apes. In the same vein as Washoe, the pair attempted to gain some insight into Lucy's weird chimp noggin by raising her like you would a human. You know, dressing herself, using silverware, making tea, looking at magazines, pretending she knows what a word is, all that jazz. But as Lucy matured, things took an ugly turn. For one, since she was brought up in a basically human environment, she eventually discovered the time-tested human pastime of alcohol. The pair would leave bottles of gin around their home with Lucy, which, I don't know how you'd make this mistake twice, but it was apparently a common occurrence for them to leave her alone for too long and come back like, honey, I think the monkey's fucking wasted. Again. Another one of her hobbies was sculpting crude human heads out of poop. Her own poop, to be clear. They also left some copies of Playgirl magazine around for Lucy to flip through, which she became very fond of. So fond, in fact, that she was caught multiple times, having relations with the vacuum cleaner. I don't understand the mechanics of it, cause no source I found ever went into detail, and believe me, I wanted to know as much as you do. All I know is that, all things considered, some pretty exemplary tool use there. So the pair saw this and they were like, alright, we gotta get this chimp laid, and fast. But the problem was, Lucy was conversing with people, eating with people, flicking the old chimp bean to people, so it's not a stretch to think that Lucy thought she was people. So imagine you're people, and you get thrown into an enclosure with a full-grown, horny male chimp, chimp, you'd have a fucking panic attack. And that's just what Lucy did. As the years went on, Lucy got more and more violent, regularly trashing the place to get out the frustration of not being able to comprehend what was so fundamentally unnatural about her existence. Finally, the couple had enough and decided to take Lucy to a primate rehabilitation center in the Gambia, with the hopes that she could be forced to acclimate to primate life. She could barely cope with it at first, getting real depressed and hardly associating with the other apes. Which you'd be depressed too if you had to give up a life of American luxury complete with booze and vacuum fornicating to go live with chimps in the wild. But with the help of a graduate student named Janice, Lucy eventually came to accept her fate, and although she'd never mate with another of her kind, she ended up getting along with her troop well enough. About a year after leaving the rehab center, Janice came back to visit, and Lucy gave her a warm embrace before waddling back to the rest of the chimps. Aww. Then Lucy got poached like a fucking egg, which kinda puts a damper on the whole happy ending, but you know, whatever. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and I fell down the stairs this morning.